The Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, December 14th, 2017. My name is Michael Brooks, and I'm Michael Thursday, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Ryan Singel on the gutting of net neutrality, which is happening right now. The FCC is in the process of creating a multi-tiered system which will slow down the internet and hurt independent media. We're going to talk about that and potentially how we can reverse this damage in the future. It's the 5-year anniversary of the Sandy Hook massacre. And of course, record numbers of Americans support some very modest and seemingly commonsensical gun control legislation, even as the House passes a bill to allow concealed carry across state lines. You've probably been leaving comments, if you're watching or listening to this program, telling the FCC not to create a 2-tiered slowed down internet. And there's probably very few normal Americans that would be commenting to the FCC in support of a big giveaway to Verizon, which is apparently why, according to the New York Attorney General, there have been about 2 million identities stolen to leave fake comments in support of the FCC changes. That's odd. And House and Senate leaders of the Republican Party have apparently agreed on the final form of a tax package, which will still look like a massive giveaway to the wealthiest Americans and also specifically devastate Puerto Rico's manufacturing sector. They're covering a lot of ends there. And CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program, it's starting to run out of funds, and it's affecting states' abilities to implement the program now. Where did all that money go? Who knows? And Roy Moore, he is refusing to concede his loss. The malls of Alabama brace as a upset, deranged man seeks comfort. No, he's not doing that yet. Apparently, he's just put out a fire and brimstone video talking about gay people, school prayer, and a right of a man to claim to be a woman, and vice versa.
It's hard for him to count to 17, so all the ballots that were cast.
Fair enough. Roy Moore apparently is going to put a little bit more of a fight in, but the Republican Party, they seem to be ready to dispense of him. But please never forget that the National Party and national leadership was content to have a almost certain child predator elected to the United States Senate just so they could go forward with their oligarch economic agenda. And, you know, what got lost in the pedophilia stories and the predation stories around Roy Moore was really just the sort of broader reality of him as just a absolutely horrible person who virulently anti-gay, opposed to transgender rights. Of course, as the tip of the iceberg, Muslims shouldn't be allowed to serve in Congress, according to Roy Moore. All manner of sort of bigoted extremist positions. And if it wasn't for the predator charges, he would have won. and the Republicans would have been quite happy to welcome him. And they were still happy to welcome him even after multiple credible women stepped forward with stories of him approaching them down to the age of 14. So just let that sink in, along with every story we do know about the current president and the many, many, many credible charges against him. It's pretty disgusting. But that was a genuine, I mean, Doug Jones is not going to be anybody here's favorite senator, but
take it where you can get it.
Take it where you can get it, and he's also not going to be the worst. I mean, right. I noticed that I haven't liked, he's been hedging on getting seated to vote against that tax bill, which I do not like. But I also noticed one of the first tweets that he put out after his victory was that the Senate needed to get together and Congress needed to come together across party lines, blah, 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 and he will use those kind of tropes. But he said they needed to do it in order to make sure the chip was fully funded. So, great. There's an advocate for TRIP who prosecuted Klansmen, defeated a zealot predator with Stone Age politics. That's a good thing for America.
That unity talk is fine as long as it ends with put the money in the bag. Exactly.
I think we can all unify, and only a sociopath would not support funding children's health insurance. Oh, it's so weird that all the Republicans are sociopaths. Funny how that works out. Ajit Pai is the head of the FCC. He is the guy who is muscling through these changes that are happening right now, and we're going to talk about with Ryan Singel in a few minutes. He went to the offices of the august Daily Caller, and I really would be curious to find out about, you know, who's advertising on the Daily Caller. Net neutrality is an issue that even in the right-wing grassroots, there isn't like a huge amount of enthusiasm for a giant Comcast Verizon giveaway. So he went to the Daily Caller, and I don't even know how to set this video up. This is one of the most sort of infuriating, stupid, loathsome. It is literally the worst of all possible worlds converging together in the form of a just sort of utterly contemptible propaganda video on behalf of creating a multi-tiered, slowed down, corporatized internet. Here is Ajit Pai at the Daily Caller's offices doing a meme video to as a form of propaganda for destroying the internet. And pause it up.
I'm Ajit Pai.
If you're listening to this, the images are actually pretty self-explanatory. You won't get the full, utterly disgusting experience of watching this chowderhead do selfies and pretend to play with a lightsaber, but you'll get the grotesque idea, and if you want to really submerge into the depths, you can watch it on YouTube later.
I'm the chairman of the FCC. Recently, there's been quite a bit of conversation about my plan to restore internet freedom. Here are just a few of the things you'll still be able to do on the internet after these Obama-era regulations are repealed. You can still gram your food. Quality. Are you selfieing or just... You can still post photos of cute animals, like puppies. You can still shop for all your Christmas presents online. Yes, got that bulk deal on fidget spinners. Yes, those Eclipse glasses are so cheap. You can still binge watch your favorite shows. You can still stay part of your favorite fan community. You can still drive memes right into the ground. And everything else you ever did on the internet. Like everything. All of it. All of it.
For more money and at slower speeds. And of course, none of this addresses independent journalism, hurting people that, as an example, exposed what was happening in Ferguson when the national press was not there. Great. It's a really, really overused phrase, but, I mean, what else you got besides banality of evil for that? I mean, it was infuriating.
It's just funny to think back on, like, what historians will think about this, and they'll be, like, comparing it to the propaganda of, like, World War I, World War II.
Like, the quality really went down.
They're like, yeah, they just kind of, like, fucked around on a green screen and didn't know how to mix audio properly.
Right.
Here's sriracha sauce. Ha ha ha.
Oh, Gene likes sriracha and spinners. Oh, he's so relatable. Jesus Christ. Are you always losing stuff? You losing your stuff, Matt? Brendan?
Like patience? Oh no, never mind.
Okay. Are you always losing your stuff? It stopped being cute years ago. Now you just annoy everyone who knows you, friends, family, coworkers, because you're that person who always loses stuff. Time for TrackR. 8 years ago, Tracker changed everything when they released their first tracking device. Now they've done it again with a all-new Tracker Pixel. With Tracker Pixel, you'll never worry about losing your things again. Tracker Pixel is the lightest Bluetooth tracking device on the market. Place Tracker Pixel on whatever you tend to lose. Keys, wallets, purse. It's small enough to fit anywhere. When you misplace an item that has Tracker Pixel attached, use your smartphone, and a 90 decibel alert will help you find it in seconds. It even has powerful LED lights so you can find anything, even in the dark.
Actually, I got a hard drive. I might put one of these on.
Boom. It's exactly what you should. Lose your phone. Just press a button on your Tracker Pixel and your phone rings, even if it's on silent. That could have helped me in plenty of occasions. You can even locate your item if it's miles away, because every Tracker user is part of the largest crowd locate network in the world. It's like Waze for finding things. Tracker makes a great gift, and during this holiday season, save 20% off your order when you go to tracker.com/majority. When you go to thetracker.com/majority. That's the tracker, TRACKR.com/majority for 20% off. Tracker.com/majority. There's a link to it on the homepage as well. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Ryan Singel about the overturning of net neutrality and what we can do about it. Welcome back. Michael Brooks on the Majority Report. Joining us now is Ryan Singel. He is a former reporter for Wired magazine. He's now a fellow at the Stanford Law School Center for Internet and Society. Ryan, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. It's happening right now. The FCC, the Republican majority in the FCC, is moving forward to overturn net neutrality. I have no doubt that everybody listening to or watching this show probably has some sense of what net neutrality means and what the implications of it are. But maybe, just sort of reset us again. What does net neutrality ensure for the internet?
Yeah, so net neutrality is a pretty simple principle. So it's the idea that we as Americans are the ones who get to choose what websites we want to visit, what apps we want to use, and what services we use on the internet, and that Comcast, Verizon, AT&T of the world should not make that decision for us, and that those companies should not interfere with the actual free market of the internet. It's been, and it's been that way, since the internet's inception in the U.S. And this is a radical departure.
And what did the 2015 FCC guidelines under the Obama administration? What did they do? What did they ensure?
Yeah, so, one thing I would say about the 2015 order is, they didn't come out of nowhere. Before the 2015 order, there was a 2010 order. Before that, there was a 2004 policy statement. So the 2015 order built on sort of previous work by the FCC to keep ISPs from messing with our choices of what we do online, and put those orders on a very solid legal foundation. The rules specifically prohibited ISPs from blocking any illegal content, website, or app. It prevented them from creating fast lanes or slow lanes. The fast lanes would be something that would be paid, so companies would have to pay to be in the fast lane, and prevented a sort of unreasonable discrimination. So doing things like slowing down video traffic or things that could benefit the ISP's own services over other people's. So the other thing that they did is they also prevented, I think this is very important, they prevented ISPs from websites and services simply to have access to an ISP subscriber, right? So what the ISPs wanted was to be able to go to Yelp and say, hey, Yelp, nice website you got there. Why don't you give us, $250,000 a month, and we'll have your site load for our subscribers. So these were good, strong, bright line rules, but I think it's just as important as what the order didn't do. People like to call these utility-style regulations, and they're not. They're common carrier regulations. There's no rate regulation, right? Comcast will raise your rates without going to some authority to do that, right? And unlike your electric company, which actually has almost always has some sort of board it has to go to justify its rate increases. So the Obama administration struck a nice balance of let's make some solid rules that are legally defensible, while also making it so that ISPs still had incentives to invest, and startups, entrepreneurs could continue to launch companies, and free speech would not be interfered with.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We'll sort of circle back to that. I'm certainly of these things need to be regulated like utilities sort of school. But before we get there, I mean, so specifically, what is the Ajit Pai FCC doing to overturn those rules? And let's just keep going slow. What are they doing?
So this order is fairly radical. So essentially it gets rid of all of the FCC's rules against blocking fast lanes, pay prioritization, or charging websites for access. Right? We've had no blocking rules in the United States since the first time they were enforced was 2004 by Republican Chairman Michael Powell. So getting rid of that. There's no longer a no blocking rule. Comcast, AT&T, and Verizon can now decide to block websites for whatever reason they want, and including objectionable content. He's replacing those rules with, or sort of, he's enhancing there was another rule in the 2015 sort of order, which required that ISPs be transparent with their customers about what they do. Right. So that stays. That's basically the only thing that stays. He's also reclassifying broadband providers from common carriers to information services. And due to a number of court rulings in response to lawsuits from ISPs who didn't like this oversight, once they're in that category, the FCC literally can't put into those rules. So even if there becomes a problem with blocking, the FCC can't do anything. So they're kicking all this over to the Federal Trade Commission, which can only do two things. One, if an ISP tells you that they're not going to block services at all, and they do, then the FCC can go after them for violating their promise to you. But if you sign up for Comcast and in the fine print it says we block objectionable content and you don't notice it, they can block whatever sites they want. The FCC can't do anything about that. The FCC can also go after some anti-competitive conduct by ISPs, which sounds nice, but anti-competitive conduct is very different in the FTC sort of parlance than it is the way most people think of it. So, for instance, the FCC would be fine. They had a report in 2007 when they thought they should be in charge of this, where they said they thought it'd be fine if Comcast or Verizon, say, struck a deal with Skype and said, Skype will be the exclusive VoIP provider for our subscribers, and all the other ones would be excluded. Because they really aren't in that business, right? They're not VoIP providers. That's not anti-competitive. So there's lots of things that ISPs can do that would just sort of, most net neutrality violations would seem to Americans to be anti-competitive, but the FTC uses a kind of a more of an economist kind of view that will allow quite a bit of misconduct.
So I feel like there's sort of three other sort of broad sections to get to. One is, well, let's start with actually one sort of last question, setting the table for how we've got here, and then we'll kind of get to what comes next and how we could potentially fight it. It seems like, and this is, just definitely my read of politics and how policy is made in Washington, which is that it's very much a process that is totally dominated by corporate money. Not necessarily even always in a crude way, but just even in a way in terms of what think tanks get funded, just the process is utterly dominated by money. So the notion that, of course, public support and public pressure that the FCC experienced, even by the way, under the Obama administration, was significant. But I think also just as significant, if not much more significant, in fact, was that it seemed like net neutrality used to be a kind of like a site of an intercorporate battle, which is that the ISPs and obviously, these sort of like legacy, I would say monopolistic companies like Verizon, like Comcast, that really don't provide, they literally provide essential services, of which they're totally underregulated, but they're just, they're controlling lanes and essentially just getting private sector taxes on the lanes, right? Like, it's a very kind of simple, crude business model. And they see in gutting net neutrality enormous new opportunities to essentially just sort of privatize commons and generate new profits out of it. If I don't have to ensure equal lanes, there's a million different packages that I can slice and dice. And, if we're being honest, maybe some of those things are even like, I don't know, maybe Netflix can figure it out. The NFL can figure it out. They just signed some type of exorbitant, massive deal, I think, with Verizon for streaming. So, but the Googles, the Netflix, the companies that sort of represent this Silicon Valley, the sort of new emerging empires of business, seemed like they were pretty strongly on the side of net neutrality. Where have they been in this fight? I mean, when I go and check my other show on Patreon, Patreon certainly has a page thrown up. There's, to sign a petition to preserve net neutrality. But I remember several years ago with what I think it was the SEPA, or forgetting the name of the legislation, but I mean,
SOPA.
SOPA.
Yeah,
I mean, Google, even with like the internet went dark, Wikipedia. I mean, those companies really flexed their muscles, and they have the kind of muscles that speak in Washington, which is money and influence. Where were they during this, and what does that mean for the future of their conduct in a post net neutrality world?
Those are all great questions, and I love the lead up. So yes, this is the broadband market is dysfunctional. 51% of Americans have only one choice of broadband providers, right? It's not getting any better, right? We're only seeing more consolidation there. And to your point, yes, this order is really about one specific thing. ISPs have, for a very long time, looked at the internet and all of the money that's made out there and all the companies that are flowing across, their pipes to get to consumers and want to get at that money, right? So in 2005, Ed Whitaker, CEO of SBC, put his foot in his mouth and said, the Googles, Yahoos of the world, they're not going to get to use my pipes for free. Verizon in 2013 told a federal court that when it was suing over the 2010 rules, that it should have the right to charge any website any amount of money it wanted with no oversight over how much they asked, simply to get to users. And if that company didn't pay up, then Verizon could cut them off. And this is the one I love because this is kind of reasoning that only a telecom could come up with. That didn't count as blocking. Right? Blocking was only if you block someone on content grounds, right? So arbitrarily. They're like, we're totally fine with the no blocking rule as long as we can also do this other thing, right? So it is all about ISPs. And in fact, that's the entire, that's, I'm not exaggerating because this is actually the sort of Pai's rationale, which is that if we got rid of these rules and ISPs made more money, then they'd finally get us rural broadband. That's the plan.
That
right?
is
I mean, literally, if you read the order, this is the plan. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. And then sort of coming back to your question, yes, early in this is a fight that's gone on for a very long time. Google used to be a huge player in fighting for this. In 2008, it convinced the FCC to attach net neutrality rules to an auction of very valuable spectrum, basically all of the spectrum that's now used for 4G. Not all of it, but to one big slice that Verizon bought, and they attached net neutrality rules to it. And in order to do that, they had to guarantee that they would spend $4 billion to buy that spectrum if nobody else did. So, Google put a $4 billion bet on net neutrality in 2008. Right. They say a few things now, but let's be honest, the Googles, Facebooks, Netflix of the world, they can all afford to pay off ISPs.
Yep.
Openness is the strategy of the startups, of the insurgents, right? So the ones who are fighting for this are exactly the Patreons of the world, like the Etsy's, right? The smaller companies, startups, and even the venture capitalists, because they want to build the next Google, right? So they're the ones who are telling the FCC that hey, this is bad. This is going to increase costs for startups because every startup's going to have to pay off just to load for Verizon or to be in the fast lane so they can be as fast as the incumbents. This plan is bad for innovation, for actual innovation, because when the FCC says innovation, what they really mean is toll booth.
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly it. People need to have that right. Anytime you hear innovation from Ajit Pai, you should just think of, going down the highway and stopping and throwing change at a toll booth. The only difference being at least the change in that toll booth is actually doing something to benefit your trip. It's that actually is helping the road you're on. It's versus maybe it's actually more analogous to sometimes I remember this as a friend of mine from Jamaica was talking about how like you go to like certain neighborhoods and like, you know, sometimes like guys just pop out with like a machete and they're very friendly, but it's like, yeah, you got to pay the street tax. This is more analogous to what Verizon's doing. So, okay, let's then go into the sort of like depths of how bad this could get, and then we'll try to get to a note of hope. But first, let's get to how bad it is and how we can respond and deal with this assault by the Ajit Pai FCC. And it seems to me that, like, you know, the internet, far from being some type of like kind of weird sort of libertarian fantasy, is actually in some ways the perfect representation of a kind of balanced social democracy, in the sense that it is built on massive government funding and public sector investment. And then it created a space for both small-scale market innovation and startups and private sector activity, which of course helped build the internet, and then also commons and community-based, you know, outside of government and outside of private, genuine third sector kind of organic development. And that is big deal. Linux, Wikipedia, and also even a lot of the models that companies have innovated on top of, whether they be Google or IBM. And in that system, you know, things like government regulation and net neutrality, and obviously we're going to need to start looking into the big four, in my view, and sort of anti-monopoly politics. If you strip that away, and what we're doing with the FCC is going to make it more just like kind of insurgency protection, monopoly protection, and the content is going to look more like cable news. And we got to think about, you know, who do we have to protect here? We have to protect consumers who are going to get hurt by this. We have to protect the startup and innovation community, and we also need to protect the, you know, independent voices, journalism, and you know, online, you know, decentralized communities, essentially. So what are the lanes that, like, first of all, how is it going to hit us? And then what can be done in the next couple of years to try to minimize the damage? Do we have to start going directly to corporations themselves to the extent we have any possible purchasing power? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah. So, you know, this is the thing. Like, when this order goes into effect, which, you know, probably sometime just in December, maybe a bit longer, it just depends. It has to be published in the Federal Register. You know, the internet's not going to change the next day. You know, ISPs aren't going to come out with like crazy looking cable package plans like immediately, right? Like, these folks are smart, right? Like, you know, and they can see that, like, you know, I think the Washington Post poll the other day was something like 85% of Americans, you know, supported keeping the existing net neutrality protections, and you know, three out of every four Republican agreed with keeping the protections, right? Right. So what I think you're going to see first is there going to be there's ways for them to start to charge providers more money, right? That may not be very visible, right? So, for instance, you know, lots of companies, you know, they pay their web hosting provider to be online, and that web hosting provider pays 3 or 4 middlemen, right? These sort of middle mile providers, level 3 Cogent, which then deliver those to the various broadband, you know, sort of subscriber networks around the United States and around the world. So what we'll probably see, and this is what we saw Comcast and the top 6 ISPs do in 2013, is try and get those people to pay them money, right? So they did this in 2013, trying to figure out how to get Netflix to pay them money, even though Netflix isn't dumping traffic onto their network. They're sending traffic that Comcast subscribers are paying them paying Comcast to deliver. Right. So there's sort of insidious ways, and so that works its way back up the chain, right? So if you're the middle mile provider starts to like have to pay Comcast and Verizon a significant chunk of money, right? So when this happened in 2013, one of those level 3 said that like one of those companies, I think it was AT&T, wanted to have level 3 pay it as much money as level 3 was already paying to get to all of the internet already. So, you know, you can imagine, you know, every ISP just keeps raising that price, that then they have to charge that to the web host, and then the web host has to charge that to the company. Right. And so then every company's cost to be online goes up. and then every service, so then you're going to get fewer free services because it's more expensive to offer free services. Paid services will become more expensive. The cool, cheap, fun side projects will become more expensive, right? So the way I kind of think of it is like the internet's going to become more boring and less weird and less democratic. That's the first thing you're going to see. And then we'll see some ways that they're going to try and charge individuals, right? And they might do it as like 4K video comes along, right? Like you're going to have to get a 4K video package. It's going to be the slow boil. But it's upending that, changing that payment model upends the entire way that the internet has worked for 30 years. And actually starts to take us back to like an old bad payment model, right? I remember, that still exists. So like, if you use a regular landline phone and try to place a long distance call to, say India, right? It's going to cost you $2 a minute.
Right.
And that's not because it's an expensive phone call. It's because India has a telecom authority who set the rules to say like any incoming long distance call, is $1.50 per minute.
Right.
You have to pay us.
Right.
So then all of a sudden, like you start to get to that point where everything's expensive again. One of the amazing thing about the internet is that it's cheap to get online. It's cheap to run a blog. It's cheap for somebody to create a company that will let you make a blog for free.
Or for that matter, collaborate globally. Like, I mean, I worked briefly at when I was out of college, I worked for essentially a strategy and consulting company, but we worked like, there was a concentration of people in the Bay Area, but I was in New York, and there were people in India, and there were people in Colorado, and we could synchronize team meetings and do projects we needed to do on all of these platforms like Skype and all of these other sort of these barriers were not barriers.
Yeah. I mean, like the come for all sorts of things, whether that's like you're a nonprofit and then all your communication tools are now price of zero, right? Or you're trying to get the word out about something, or you just like want to have people find you. You just you can start a free blog. It's pretty easy. I worked at Wired for 10 years, and then I had an idea to how to make recommendations for publishers better. So I started working on it, and the first month cost us $20. A year later, when I left Wired to run it full time, like we had paying customers, we were doing great stuff. Our cost to run the entire service, right, was like $285, right? You can do this, and that's the same for everybody. And I mean, it's not like if you raise these prices, investors are going to pay for it. Facebook's had their server cost was $85 a month when they started, and they didn't get money for funding until they had 250,000 users, right? So it's we're going to hurt all sectors of the internet, right? From the from people doing organizing to people that just want to be heard and run a cooking blog, right? To would-be entrepreneurs, to small businesses, right? So every business now relies on the internet. I was talking with a guy who runs a vaping shop in Colorado, right? And when his internet cable connection got cut with some guys doing construction down the street, his business ground to a halt because it was all of his inventory management software, right? All the payroll software, right? Everything, the payments. So if you increase the costs, it's not just to the startups or the big companies, it's to every sector of the U.S. economy. This is a radical bad change.
So what is to be done in this? I mean, I want to get to hopefully some, Bernie Sanders is president in 2020, what does an FCC do to overturn this, right? But in the next couple of years, what is can cities do their own plan? Can state on the state level, what is there consumer power? What is there anything that can be sort of done here?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
On the consumer level, I'm going to call that the citizen level. Keep calling Congress.
Yes.
This works. the first Republican senator, right, broke with the plan. So
Susan Collins
late,
broke
but
today,
Susan
right?
Collins came out and called in a really strong letter. Like I was really kind of blown away. She basically said, like, this is bad for the economy. Keep the protections. This is going to hurt rural broadband providers. Like, this whole process was rushed. Like, halt the vote. Like,
right.
That's awesome, right? It's just very clear this is a nonpartisan issue,
right.
And folks in Congress are hearing that. Their phones have been melting just through Battle for the Net alone. Battleforthenet.com, which is kind of the
we'll have the link again on our homepage, battleforthenet.com. Light up the phones today, everybody.
Yeah, 800,000 calls to Congress since this order was dropped the day before Thanksgiving, right? So, like, we saw Representative Mike Kaufman, a Republican in Colorado. He came out earlier this week, also called for that for the vote to be halted. So Congress oversees the FCC. They can put pressure on them, and 2018 midterms are coming up, right? This is going to be in play there. Don't let them think like it's done and gone, and that it was okay that if you're represented by a Republican legislator, that they sat by and didn't say anything. They know this is a bad plan, right? I mean, literally, they know this is a bad plan. And, so far that even today, Marsha Blackburn, who's, one of the Republicans most in the pocket of telecoms, came out and said, oh, well, we'll do some legislation, right? Like, interesting.
Sure. Just like they did with when they gutted the Voting Rights Act. Congress swooped in and fixed what the Supreme Court did. Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was pretty clear this was like a 1-2 punch. Like, first, let's create a crisis, and then we'll write some crappy legislation. But cities and statewide. So I would bet in the next couple of days we're going to see states coming in to try and put in their own net neutrality protections. The FCC order tried to preempt that, but it's not clear that legally they can do that. They could preempt states when they called when broadband providers were common carriers, but because they took them out of that designation, the states are free to regulate internet, like, sort of information services. So we could see state level pushes. We saw that happen in California recently, where California almost got through a really great privacy law about ISPs. Then cities and states can do other things too. Like, you can do things to promote broadband deployment. And I think we've seen some great stuff around municipal fiber development, because there have been success stories. Chattanooga built itself a great network. Now you land in the airport, right, in Chattanooga, the sign, they call themselves the gig city, right, or the gigabit city. We've seen lots of places in Colorado that are voting to look into this, and even there was in Fort Collins, and the ISPs hate this. In Fort Collins, they were putting a referendum on at a referendum that basically said we're going to talk about this, right? Because ISPs got the state to pass a law where even for municipalities to consider something, they had to pass, they had to pass a referendum. Comcast and Charter through sort of corporate front groups spent $500,000 to beat that versus $10,000 by the local folks, and it passed. So Fort Collins hasn't built anything yet, but there's been some really there's some really good ways, and it makes sense. And so, like, it doesn't even have to be that the cities run the networks. So there was an interesting case recently, or an interesting network built recently where the city built all the infrastructure, and then let any ISP that wanted to rent their services, and built it in a way that literally you could change ISPs like on a web page. Like, you could, like, within 15 seconds be like, I'm tired of this service, I'm going to go to these guys.
Wow.
Right? And you would
that's
have
great.
So it's like, oh, great, right? Okay, you can have fantastic fast internet connections, and you can switch ISPs. Like, I would love to see that. So I think that's a great thing, because municipal networks work really well. They save cities money, over the long term. The problem is it's expensive, and this is the reason we don't have much competition. Is it's really expensive to build a network, and you have to think of it like infrastructure that it's going to pay itself off over time, right? It's going to take 7 or 10 years, right? But the way I like to think of it is, like, nobody ever complains about the cost of the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Nobody even knows how much that cost.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
You know, so then as a final, I mean, I'm going to go a little bit broader here, but you know, you can keep it as focused as you want. But it does strike me that, say in 20, you know, yes, and first of all, you're absolutely right. Make this a key issue in 2018. But say in 2020, somebody's elected, and this, in fact, you know, I mean, even beyond my sort of, you know, preference of a you know, real kind of genuine left candidate. This is one of these issues, and people should know this. And one of the, you know, this is one of those margins of like why you vote for a Hillary over a Trump. You know, this is a, even some of the more kind of mediocre elected Democrats are going to be just better on pure average on this issue than Republicans. If Democrats take back control in 2020, or potentially even legislatively after 2018, but I guess looking forward. Let's go to 2020, because I want to know what a Democratic FCC could do to overturn this and kind of save the internet from the ISPs again. And then maybe if you could, less specifically, but speak to it, it just strikes me that sort of net neutrality is the tip of an iceberg of a whole set of questions that we do not have a 21st century consumer protection network and government power and citizenship engagement that is in any way commensurate with the power of technology in our lives. Everything from the future of privacy to medical discrimination, to, in fact, the reality that, you know, your internet connection and your cell phone, like, those are utilities, and they're still regulated and treated, you know, like accessories or information services, when they absolutely are not. They're sort of embedded into our lives in a way that, you know, is like your phone when we needed to break up Ma Bell. And then, of course, you know, the big four sort of dominating the next wave of the internet economy. So I guess specifically on net neutrality, what can be done in 2020, and could this be used as the tip of a spear to look more broadly at how we're going to generate the type of broad, aggressive policy frameworks so that there's actually democratic accountability and protection from just sort of like unbelievable corporate and technological power moving forward?
Yeah, good question. So I think one of the shames of this, you know, the 2016 election, you know, there are many of them, but I'm specifically focusing on net neutrality, is, you know, we got really good rules in 2015. Like the 2010 rules were okay, but the 2015 rules were solid, and we put on a solid legal foundation. Like, you know, every time previously the FCC had like tried all these little tricks to like say, like, we're deregulating ISPs, but we have rules, and ISPs just like sued them over and over. Like, you can't stop us from blocking BitTorrent. Right. You know, you can't. We finally got to defensible rules. Like the 2015 rules got challenged in court twice, and the court just like sent the telecoms packing. Like, this is solid, good law, right? Mm-hmm. And if that had been able to stay in effect, I think for, you know, we had 2 years, right? Or if we had 5 years, right? Or 4 years, right? The arguments that are being marshaled against this, that, you know, ISPs aren't going to innovate in their, you know, invest in their networks, and, you know, and this is harming innovation, would have just been gone. And it would have like served as a really good model of how to start to think about these kinds of questions, right? The sort of bigger questions. And instead we're now having to like waste a lot of energy to relitigate, you know, what was a fairly smart, measured decision in 2015. Yeah, and, you know, and this issue gets muddied a little bit because, you know, now, you know, the Google and Facebooks of the world, not to mention like Amazon,
right?
Like, you know, those folks have been, you know, starting to look problematic for a long time. You know, they were services that, you know, I covered a lot of privacy issues when I was at Wired, and, you know, they, you know, they worried the hell out of me, and they made some really bad decisions. And their motives are, generally not to be trusted.
Yep, of course.
And they've just gotten bigger, right? And it was a thing at some point, like it was like Google started launched a DNS service. It was just like, why are you guys in that business? Like, why are you in all of these businesses? And their market power just keeps getting bigger, and those are real concerns. They're really not net neutrality concerns, but they are. They get to that. Your bigger question is like, what's the regulatory model for dealing with all of these questions? And then the question, like, what do we do with all the robots? Because robots get all the jobs.
Right.
Right. So, I don't have an answer for that. What I guess, I'm just kind of a little bit just sad that we had what I think was kind of a good, interesting model where you had some bright rules but allowed innovation while constraining the bad actors.
Right.
And we could prove that it would work. Then, maybe this could work in a kind of a consumer protection thing for privacy, right? Or for dealing with I think antitrust is its own thing. Like, we have to. There's lots of people rethinking how we decided to do antitrust starting in the late 70s with just focus on short term thinking about like what's good for consumers rather than what's good for all of us long term. So I don't have a good answer there, but I think it's something that I think increasingly, the internet is not a niche issue anymore. It's not something for geeks. Like it's part of everything we do, right? From how we date to our jobs to how we talk to our parents to everything. So yeah. I definitely think, but I don't have a good answer for you, Michael. I wish I did.
But these are, at the very least, this is how I think we need to start, but everything you just framed for us is exactly what we need to start thinking. And just the bottom line that sort of an infantile kind of libertarianism or essentially just new version of, the same way the oil companies dominate the policy process or pharma. That's destructive and dysfunctional and bad enough for democracy and inequality, let alone, it's just, to me, the fundamental lack of alignment between an industry and a pace of innovation, and this is fully off of net neutrality and maybe for future conversations, but yes, creating the future, what did Elon Musk say? Something about how we're a couple years off, robots are going to move so fast they won't even be sort of visually perceptible. Robot workforces. This stuff is actually real, and there's an unbelievable amount of capital, human ingenuity, and sense of possibility, which is completely misaligned. These are people that are not thinking let's just eliminate driving as an industry. Great. Okay. Well, what happens then? And besides a few incredibly rudimentary and dull conversations and about some kind of limited version of UBI, I don't get the sense that any of these people are thinking seriously. And partially it's because it's not their job, but we as a society need to technologists are great, but we also need policymakers and ethicists and union leaders and activists and think about all the different facets of human life and how they're governed and protected and not just sort of thrown into some, sort of teenager fantasy about robots. What can I say?
Preach.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Very last question, unless you also want to preach too. But we just saw, I don't know if you saw this just dreary and contemptible and disgusting propaganda video of Ajit Pai for Daily Caller, showing that you can still do all the things that, and of course, just the depressing, the only thing you use the internet for, of course, is to take pictures of sriracha on Instagram. Of course, you wouldn't get it to, get information or anything or build community or, get cheaper tickets to fly to a new place or, all of the really exciting things about the internet. Is this the best talking point they got? You still get to share selfies?
This is the thing that was, really sad about this debate. like it was like there was not a single public hearing, right? There was not there wasn't even there was no hearing that had experts involved. They didn't want to talk about the issues the commission, the chairman started to get into fights with a Melissa Milano on Twitter, and there was just no actual policy debate. It was just essentially we would throw around the words Obama era utility regulations, and then we're done.
Right.
So the cuteness, I've seen him speak. I've never met the man. He's charming, right?
Not to me,
but right.
Yeah.
Generally he's not as funny as he thinks he is, but he's got a good stage presence, right? But even in the event I saw him out, he just wouldn't talk policy, which is basically, we haven't decided, made up our minds yet, there just hasn't been any substantive policy debate here, and I'm, it's not even in 2008, when the FCC chair, who was a Republican as well, Kevin Martin, he was trying to crack down on Comcast for blocking peer-to-peer.
Right.
He held multiple public hearings, right? He did that in I think it was there was one on the East Coast at Harvard and one out at Stanford. Huge comment period, really thoughtful, long, debate, and that was just for whether or not you were going to sanction a company for blocking a site, and went on fact finding, and this was just a sham. And so it just seems to me that the sort of the performativeness of reading mean tweets and whatever, we're substituting social network performances for actual policy debates, and that's just as disturbing to me, the process, as the content, right? And he's going on and doing that on Daily Caller. In the meantime, the FCC comment system was overrun by bots that committed identity theft. The New York Attorney General is trying to look into it, and his agency doesn't want to help. They don't even want to look into it. Right. I'm really? That's what we got? That's sad.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
But yet we're also seeing some conservatives break out. There was a great piece in National Interest yesterday that was hey, this is crony capitalism.
Right.
It's oh, ouch.
Right.
Right. So Breitbart is writing strong stories about net neutrality now. And I talked with guns.com the other day, and talk about why gun owners might be worried about.
I like the self-explanatory guns.com.
Yeah.
I dig it. I like the name of that website. All I can do is think of my Trump though and be social media performance over policy. I wonder where that came from, Ryan. Yeah. Seems like it's working out. Yeah.
But people are people get it. And especially this is the internet. This is theirs. They take this really personally, and I think the Republican Party made a very big mistake, and I think this is going to be one of the things that comes back and hits them hard in the midterms.
Well, let's make that so. Ryan Singel, I really appreciate your time. He's a former reporter at Wired. He's currently a fellow at Stanford Law's Center for the Internet and Society, and I really would like to underline society in the part of that title. Ryan, thank you so much for your work. I appreciate it, and look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Michael, thanks for having me on. This was really fun.
Take care, man. Okay, folks, we are going to go to in the new Skype system, they always ask you for a review of the call, which is annoying. Always leads me. I'm always tempted to leave a 3-star review.
That is Silicon Valley asking for free labor from its users.
That's literally what it is. I remember one time I got into a conversation, probably in 2011 or something, and it was such bizarre framing because I this was the first moment, and it was because I had done some work in the periphery of Silicon Valley. I'm definitely not a tech person, obviously, but I was working for a firm that did a lot of tech stuff, and we were building out some research and strategy around it. And so I was involved in conversations and people who were pre-thinking stuff that wasn't on people's radar, like Facebook and privacy. Facebook is essentially just this sort of giant data mining company. masquerading as a friend network in the sense of that's literally how their business model works. And somehow this came up at some dinner or something. I don't know. I just kind of mentioned it in passing. And I remember this woman was like, Facebook gives you a service for free. How dare you criticize how they make money? And I was like, man, like the propaganda of this culture is stunning. Because I was like, we need to start having a conversation about some of the like future most powerful companies in the world, already incredibly high capital value companies that are determining information flows, how we view social status. We need to start having a little bit of critical assessment of them. And her thing was like, you get to be friends with people for free, and you're not like, you should be writing Mark Zuckerberg a letter. I was just like, wow, it really was like, those kind of like the Norman Mailer, like it was, in some ways it was a little glib, but he had that thing where he said, he went to the Soviet Union in the 80s and he said like, the Soviet Union is overtly oppressive and obviously, and then he met like a handful of dissidents, and he had never met people in his life that were more free. And then in America, nobody was free, but they just didn't notice. And I mean, it was kind of a creative license there, but I took his point. He was making a point of sort of like, cultural commodification and consumerism as its own sort of form of servitude. And when I heard her comment, I was like, well, there it is. It's Norman Mailer right there.
It hasn't changed. 100 years ago, when H.G. Wells was writing War of the Worlds, a sort of a low-key anti-imperialist tract, right. This guy, Garrett P. Service, wrote a counter narrative, Edison's Conquest of Mars, where Thomas Edison used his techno skills. Basically, he was a proto Elon Musk and saved the world from the aliens who are the real aggressors. So,
thank you. Elon Musk really irritates me. Probably have to get into him on the Michael Brooks Show. Become a member of the Majority Report. That's how we keep the ship sailing. As always, thank each and every one of you for making it happen. True, independent, unbought, unbossed media. Check out Majority Report Kickback, which has doorways for you that you might find useful to your online shopping experience. What else? Portals to help with connectivity. Number is 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. The IMs are on. This was another great... next week is going to be the 20th episode of the Michael Brooks Show, talking with the really legendary academic Adolph Reed, and then Will Menaker is going to join me in studio, along with, of course, super producer Matt Leck. We're close to our next goal of 900 patrons. Check it out. And as part of the Illicit History series, which is usually like uncovering like the Bolivian drug cartels and the CIA or the secret history of Corey Pine of Silicon Valley fascism. There's a lot of meat to it. We're developing a teleplay on the secret biography of Nation of Islam Obama. And some of that is going to be under the Illicit History vertical and behind the paywall. So if you haven't yet, check out the Michael Brooks Show. Either if you want to get the whole thing on Patreon, what are you waiting for? Or if you're just checking out, watch it on YouTube channel, Michael Brooks Show, on this YouTube channel, or check it out, Michael Brooks Show in iTunes. I think we're at like over 170 something reviews or something on iTunes, and they're mostly all very nice. Appreciate all of you. A ton to get to in the fun half with me, Brendan, and Matt. Exactly.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Homo says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck them.
Homo says what?
What?
Homo says what?
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black Africans. And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black.
You see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black.
Come on! Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
Pussy. 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 Pussy.
Welcome back. Welcome to the fun half. The great DJ Danarchy on that track. Were you about to play applause? Okay, yes, actually, let's do that. Let us take our first phone call of the day. You're calling from a 631 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's Tim from New Paltz. How you guys doing?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. Just had 2 quick points I wanted to make. Awesome interview. That guy was really on the ball with the whole thing.
He was great. We were just talking about that in the break.
Yeah, he just had such a good grasp of this from different angles. And I think that one angle we got to really talk about is politically speaking, this is a really, really stupid, short-sighted move for the GOP to fall in behind this, because there is no easier company to get a person pissed off at than their shitty cable provider. Everyone hates them.
The truth.
And if you just tie them, right now the GOP is tied to a probable pedophile and fucking Spectrum cable, like things that most humans hate.
Right.
Like, what the hell are they thinking? It's good. The left needs to capitalize on these horrible allies that they're making now.
You know what was so funny was that I remember reading a Breitbart comment. There was some piece, I think at Intercept, where they tracked somebody who was talking about how some of the right-wing sites were opposed to this. And one of the commenters, or maybe even was a columnist on Breitbart, actually pointed out, and this is, of course, like, well, this will change, obviously, because of this. And it's to the Democrats' shame. But, like, they were like, you know, some of these ISPs give a lot of money to Democrats. Like, they were kind of saying from both angles. They were like, first, this is bad for us. And secondly, like, you know, this is going to help Democrat corporations. And I was like, you know, I thought it was great. I was like, that is, if that talking point travels the right wingosphere, that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's true, honestly. And I'm not expecting much intellectual depth from Breitbart people because they're mostly shills.
Right,
but
of course.
You know, it's good for it to be in the ecosystem at least.
Yes.
And I had a quick thing about the automation point you guys brought up. And I'm sure you've all read The Conquest of Bread. Everyone in that studio has probably read that book.
The Conquest of Bread. I'm going to not lie to you. I've not read that book. What's that book?
Oh, it's great. It's really good. It's from like the 1800s.
Have you guys read
a treatise on...
I have, but it's anarcho-capital or anarcho-communist.
Anarcho-communist.
Foundation.
Okay.
Text.
Yeah,
cool.
It's basically a proto-anarcho-communist treatise, and it's really great.
Okay.
And when I read it, it's well written, it's really good, but the one thing is it fills me with this profound sense of loss of time wasted, because in the book, the author says, why are we toiling for no reason? We have steam engines. We have more technology than any of our ancestors could have ever conceived of. One man can do the work of 100. We should live in fully luxury, automated communism. And if he could be alive today and see the technology we have, he'd weep at the fact that we even work at all.
Well, that's
that's
like the much deeper, much more interesting, grounded reference. But I'll take the much shorter term and sort of less, you know, in-depth reference. But like, I think Sam's made the point about like growing up and like watching the Jetsons and being like, even the Jetsons were saying like, yeah, it's just, you're going to have like, everything is going to be totally...
Just you wait.
Yeah. It's all just going to be an endless chill sesh while you bop around space. And of course now, I mean, that synchronization, and the person who got this the best in my modern reading is Zygmunt Bauman, who wrote Wasted Lives and Liquid Modernity. And he's someone that people should really look up. He's definitely a big influence on me. And he connected.
Yeah, I'll pick that up.
Yeah, he connected the thread of, on one hand, like the people who are fortunate enough to be employed, including like the most fortunate, they're totally overworked and overcommitted through these technologies and in a constant state of like anxiety and production. And they're really privileged on the chain. And then lower on the production chain, they're used to monitor and sort of literally physically sort of terrorize people, as in like the Amazon fulfillment houses, right? Like technology used to just like grind people out and work them to max efficiency regardless of their bodily and emotional limits. And then technology creates a whole other, you know, massive levels of unemployment and what he called like just essentially just like discarded life. And so, yeah, I mean, it's worked in like the complete inverse of what people initially thought the problem would be, and including like super mainstream thinkers, you know, like Keynes or the Jetsons. It's just that, oh, this is going to be great.
Right.
And in the 1990s,
kind of the whole point.
Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book called The End of Work, which I used for something in college. And I remember I was researching it, and I'll do a little Bernie bro ding on Krugman now, although I do appreciate Krugman in some ways. But I remember Krugman wrote a review of it in Slate in the 90s, and he was like, oh, this guy doesn't understand economics. Like, all of these jobs were going to get replaced. And, you know, and actually Rifkin, maybe in some ways, you know, the book isn't precise, and I'm sure certain things turned out to be wrong. But his essential insight was like, no, we're creating industries that Google, Twitter, Facebook, Apple are never going to replace the jobs that are, you know, lost in mass scale deindustrialization. It's not the way those companies are set up.
Right. No, it's true. And it's true. It's really true.
It's really true. It's
and
great.
Before I jump off, I've been kind of reaching out because this whole antitrust thing is really interesting, and no one ever talks about it politically, I feel. And I reached out to a bunch of politicians on Twitter and just asked them, what's your stance on antitrust in relation to these huge tech companies? And I largely got a series of responses that could be described as a shrug or not really understanding what I meant, except for Brianna Wu, who's running in Massachusetts. And she really had a good grasp on antitrust and was very interested in the idea. So if you're in Massachusetts, look her up. She's great.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, she had a really good response about that.
That's great. And, you know, not this is expected, but the FCC has just officially done it. So we got to go to our next phase of our war right here. All right, man.
All right, well, keep calling, people. Thanks, dude.
Yep, keep calling. Double the calls after they do this. Thanks, brother.
I'm going to call TMBS next.
Please. Oh, please do. Thanks a million, man.
Yeah, see you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That's the thing about when they're just going to do stuff that they're going to do. The point is you try to exact a price. It's not necessarily that we're going to be able to stop them when they do this stuff, but you try to exact a big a price as possible and smear them as fully with it as you can.
And by the way, we're not smearing them.
Right, yeah, I guess that's
the wrong word. Is when I've actually came across this recently in another context that I'm definitely not going to get into, but smear is another one of the, like, a smear is a distortion or a lie. Republicans, Eric Levitz nailed it last week when he was with me. I mean, we were talking about the upward wealth distribution that they're pushing through in the tax legislation. And he said the bet Republicans are making was something to the effect that democracy is just fundamentally broken. This is the same dynamic at play. The one advantage I think coming out of this for our politics is that we're leaving a lot of bullshit behind because things are becoming clearer and clearer. It's not about all these fans. It's not about the free market. It's not all this nonsense. It's not about trickle down. It's not. We know that, first of all, these policies work. They work because the purpose of these policies is to give money to rich people and protect corporate incumbents. They work incredibly effectively for what they're supposed to do. The fantasy and the nonsense is that they trickle down and benefit you. If you still believe that, then I would like to personally send you a Nigerian prince email, and I will use the proceeds of what you give me to invest in my show, right? Like, but in general, more and more people, I think, get that this is just a raw power play. Why is the FCC, why is the Ajit Pai Trump Republican FCC getting rid of net neutrality? Because powerful corporate interests want it discarded. Period. That's it. Nothing else. Why is the GOP pushing through a structural assault to destroy the American social safety net, American civil society, kill people, throw more people in poverty, create further brain drain in humanities, social sciences, and the hard sciences, lower life expectancies, and harm long-term economic growth and public health? Why are they doing that? Because the Koch brothers demand it, and other donors demand it, and their money matters infinitely more to them than anything you have to say. And they have enough people that they can leverage to get out the vote through appeals to bigotry. That's it. It's pure power. And so, you know, we still have to debunk spin, and we still have to deal with these, you know, propaganda figures, whether they're on YouTube or on TV. But fundamentally, it's all bullshit. It's all just marketing products, and it's all secondary to a ruthless and in fact very clear-eyed pursuit of robbing the commons. And if you look it through in that filter, it makes sense. It's like, look, as I keep saying, the policy totally works, because the point of the policy is take from you and give to them. All of this stuff is an enormous policy success. Look at it that way. It may not be, I guess it's just not, they have to pretend like, oh, I can't believe it didn't work out that way, because they were pretending that it would rebound to your benefit. But in reality, that's not the point of it. The point of it is that it looks just like what it is. We need to like get out of like Slate Vox America. You know, it's like the counter of this program was actually designed to do this, but counterintuitively it did that. Like, okay, great. These are like fun, cute little stories that sometimes tell an interesting anecdote. But a basic macro truth is that a policy that looks to be, if I say this policy is designed to massively tax inherited wealth and capital gains, and I want to use that to give everybody health care, increase wages, and massively improve public education, yeah, there might be problems in implementation. There might be this and that, blah, blah, blah. Overall, and we see this endlessly, whether it's in the European social model when it was before it was under assault, the New Deal, the Great Society, those things work. And if somebody comes along and they say, we want to starve and destroy public services and give the proceeds to the wealthiest, well, what happens? There isn't like the magical loop effect where it's like, well, it's amazing. We just like destroyed the public services and then we gave rich people money and then all of a sudden there was less poverty. No. Like, that's the fantasy and the nonsense. If you look at it simply as they want to take more shit, then you realize that those policies, in fact, work perfectly. They're quite effective policy making for what they're designed to do. Give rich people money. You're calling from a 255 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? You there?
Did you mean 256?
I did mean 256. But turn your radio down, please.
Is that better?
Yep. What's on your mind, buddy?
Hey, so this is Mike from Alabama.
Oh, Mike. A shofar for Roy Moore and his loss.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of go over what it looks like to vote in Alabama, since not everyone is familiar with voting laws in different states.
Yep.
So basically to vote in a district, you first have to be registered to live in that district. And you are assigned a single voting precinct that you can vote at. You cannot go across town and vote at a separate voting precinct because you don't live in that district.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, you have to live next to, and there's only one place you can vote where they'll have your name on a list. So you go there and there's, a couple guys standing at the door. And then, so you go in and they'll have your name on this really long list and they'll mark you off. And they say, all right, go to the next table. Then they have your name on another list in which they mark you off that you've been there. So they have a double check system. Then you have to sign your name and show them an ID. So there's like 3 to 4 steps to actually vote in Alabama, to actually vote. So this notion that there was some sort of fraud, like voter fraud, would be incredibly hard to pull off.
Oh, there isn't any. Oh, I mean, I'm sure that those stories are out there.
Yeah, Bill Mitchell's saying it, but he's a lunatic.
Yeah, Bill Mitchell is one of the. Yeah, Bill Mitchell has like less credibility than like the first woman cut in like Flavor of Love season 2. Yeah, Reach. Deep cut.
So I mean,
deep cut.
This notion that there was massive, voter fraud and is A, not only fantasy, but also B, that means that the Republican lawmakers who have been here forever have failed at making policy that prevents voter fraud from occurring.
I don't get into that because this is how it works. But
Well,
I
no,
wouldn't
but
get
I'm
in. I
saying,
wouldn't
like,
get into
if
the. I
it
wouldn't
was
get
even
into
true.
the. I wouldn't get into the second part because that's like a by your logic thing that's going to lead. Because here's how it works, right? This is why the conspiracy theory culture of the right matters, because it starts as the lunatic ravings of Bill Mitchell or Alex Jones or Mike Cernovich. And then it turns into, and you were absolutely the first thought. I was so happy when I saw Doug Jones won. And then the first thing I said to the person I was with, I was like, all right, well, the next thing is going to be the next wave of voter suppression targeting African Americans and other Democratic voters. That's how it starts. That's the crazy, the Trump story. I lost the popular vote because of all these undocumented workers. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. But they're going to staff the agencies, and it's been a long-term Republican strategy to suppress the vote, and weaponizing conspiracy theories and magical thinking is part of it. So I wouldn't even get into like, see, you guys would have to admit that because first of all, they don't care. They'll just bulldoze ahead. And secondly, right, they're going to take those conspiracy theories and they're going to run with it to suppress the vote. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Right, and something to keep in mind on the horizon is the 2020 census, in which they redistrict areas. Very important to keep in mind, because sometimes it's hard to for just your average Joe to kind of keep that in perspective, and it's more of a day-to-day thing in terms of politics for people.
No
but
doubt.
The 2020 census matters.
Oh,
a lot.
definitely.
That's all I wanted to say. Just to give.
Are you aware of anything in Alabama? Like, are the malls working on a program like to make sure that Roy Moore is not going back into them? Like, because I just think a lot of people, when let me be more specific. A lot of heterosexual men, when they face a setback. Or actually an accomplishment, or really anything, they're interested in being in the arms of a woman.
Any change in internal chemistry,
or non-change, then we want to be in the arms of a woman for basically literally any excuse. But that being said, I do think Roy Moore faced a very big setback. Obviously, I would imagine he's very upset. And so I think the malls and other places where underage women gather should be on high alert. Are you aware of any precautions that people in Alabama are taking right now to make sure that Roy Moore is not lurking?
Oh, they're on DEFCON 5. I mean, they are high alert. I'll tell you what.
The mall cop.
Mall cop. That's a good. I would watch that Kevin James movie. He's like, he's coming back to the mall.
That's the Cormac McCarthy
maybe we can
mall
get Kevin
cop.
Spacey to play
Cormac McCarthy mall cop starring the Roy Moore story. Or what we were saying earlier, that's a good episode of Vice Principals.
Vice Principals, yeah.
Like, what's it? Kenny Powers.
Danny McBride.
Danny McBride. Like, hey, Roy, told you to get away from the fucking janitor's closet, man. He's been here 3 days a week since you lost the election. What the fuck, Roy? Told you to stop bothering those girls. Maybe if you didn't, you might have won the election.
Gym class soccer's not spectator, Roy.
Appreciate the call, man.
All right, enjoy the show. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot, man. All right, let's do some sound. And apparently, let's start with, this is Rush. So Rush has a sort of, this is true, and I know Trump made this point himself on Twitter. He congratulated Moore, and he reminded everybody he endorsed Luther Strange, who was the sitting senator that Roy Moore beat in the primary.
I'm skeptical that he actually wrote that tweet, but apparently he also gave him a phone call too. So
maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but I do think that sometimes Trump has like a very, like you saw it during the primary, like he had a certain crude, like, you can't be like Paul Ryan and say you want to starve old people. That's not good politics. Randomly, he has like a, Roy Moore's a freak. I mean, Luther Strange is a freak, but
it's fun to look like the good guy every once in a while.
Right. And so Rush Limbaugh is pointing out that Trump's voters did not listen to Trump's endorsement in the Alabama primary.
Don't forget, it was, Trump wanted Luther Strange. The beginning of all of this, he wanted Luther Strange to be the Republican nominee. And who knows? But it might have been different if Luther Strange had been running. But remember what happened when Trump got behind Luther Strange. What did the people of Alabama do? The people of Alabama said, no, Mr. President, no. And they elected Roy Moore. And they elected Roy Moore because they thought Luther Strange was a McConnell acolyte, a swamp dweller, and they're fed up with that. So Roy Moore became attractive in exactly the way I'm saying. And Trump voters didn't listen to Trump when he was endorsing Luther Strange.
Idiots.
And I think the reason they didn't is because I don't think they thought that's what Trump really wanted. I think they thought Trump was trying to make deals with the swamp and was trying to buy him off here. So I think people that voted for Roy Moore over Luther Strange in the primary were actually trying to protect Trump. They thought they were doing what Trump really wanted, even though Trump had to say he was for Strange. This whole thing has been a mess. And it is a mess. It's a mess because the Republican establishment murkies the water and clouds them and ends up in their steadfast opposition to genuine conservatives. It causes, second and third tier people to run for office who are easily characterized as kooks or what have you. They end up becoming purity candidates. Untainted by the establishment, untainted by politics, untainted by this or that. But the problem with purity candidates is they lose. They're not winnable candidates.
So Rush is totally all over the place there, and I think he's trying to circle a square. And there is some truth, I think, to, look, Steve Bannon and Gorka were out campaigning for the pedo candidate in the Republican primary. Steve Bannon, of course, came the last week to campaign for Roy Moore, and I hope that Doug Jones is sending him, I don't know, like 20 bottles of like Corona or something, whatever the guy whatever Steve Bannon is I would speculate, drinking heavily and constantly.
Can't dissolve a body in this.
Yeah. Dissolve a body. Fuck you, Doug Jones. You put some good men behind bars. That Klan prosecution. But the thing with Rush is that Rush is, in fact, of a different era, and he is actually literally like the thing that's fascinating about Rush is like he is a mass market figure that really is like a sock puppet and embodiment of corporate America. He is the media equivalent of Mitch McConnell, although obviously he's a lot more entertaining than Mitch McConnell. But he understands where the audience is going, and he understands that he needs to indulge the Trump fantasy. And so he has to get with the whole drain the swamp scam, because a lot of his listeners are the same people that are going to be conned by that original hustle. But he's still going to loop back to his roots as essentially totally willing to say and do anything. And don't forget, the Republican establishment is just as immoral and craven as everybody else. They just like to present it in a slightly different way. And so he's going to use this as a kind of circular lesson to be like, next time, just elect the tall, horrific corporatist and don't go out on a limb to elect the lunatic pedophile guy, because that's how we get a halfway decent man in the United States Senate, and God knows we don't want that.
You dum-dums.
You idiots.
It's the dum-dum right.
It's a dum-dum.
Elected pedophile.
It's a total parity test. The King of Falamars. Mike, you and Sam should come up with a name for your fan contributors akin to Stern's Whack Pack.
Well, it has to be organic, I think.
Yeah, it has to be organic. Creative Classes. The FCC was just evacuated due to a security threat. Huh. That's weird. I wonder.
Security of the internet?
Yeah. Did they just have to evacuate it on themselves for threatening democracy? How dare you, sir? Can we deport Ajit Pai? It's the type of petty stuff I would do. I know that wasn't a woke joke. Give me a break. Disco Stew. So I hadn't realized that our revolution refused to endorse Doug Jones. It kind of makes Bernie's victory lap a little lame. This is a good example, even though of why I'm skeptical of some of these outside left groups when it comes down to it. Too often they can't be counted on thoughts. Well, I don't know specifically about our revolution. I think, to be honest, the story that we were talking about yesterday was that there were DNC operatives on the ground that helped push Jones over the top, and they were kept secret. Because any type of nationalization of that race would do nothing but help Roy Moore. I think, to be honest, like, I don't look, I think our revolution, maybe, and I'm actually not sure the political calculus of this. If I was at our revolution, I'd be like, you know what? We should throw up on our website that we're supporting a guy who put Klans people in jail over Roy Moore.
Yes.
Right? They should have done that. I don't think that their presence in the race in any type of high visibility way would have helped. Just saying, if the DNC had starved Jones of support and he lost, we'd be criticizing them heavily. So shouldn't we also be critical of our revolution here? No, they're totally different things. And again, the DNC did it really discreetly. I don't think that our revolution is not designed for an operation like that. And I think if they were seriously on the ground in Alabama, and I think that Bernie Sanders does have pretty broad appeal, more than people realize, but I would not send Bernie to campaign with Doug Jones, and I would not make it a Our Revolution campaign. So look, I think they should have registered that they endorsed him, but I don't think that that's a bigger indictment. No harm, no foul. The new Fogel. Oh, it is an image of Roy Moore in a subway. Got where that was going. Bagel P. How How does Tracker stack up with the other Bluetooth tracking device, Tile? The network size and popularity seem to be the main issue. I'm already invested in the Tile, but if it runs out, if you guys convince me, I'll switch to Tracker to support you guys. I don't know. You're going to have to do your own internet-based research on that, my man. Sewer socialism. I'm sorry. I can't get to all of these. There's a lot. I hate to scold and I hate being scolded, so I really try to save my best scolding for when it counts. It's worth engaging people on the broader left politely and hopefully with some humor when they assume the right is entirely supported and manipulated by members of the quote-unquote white working class. That is absolutely a ridiculous. Most Trump voters were middle class to incredibly affluent white people. He won on Republican voters. Many low-income white people did not vote, and many low-income white people, in fact, do vote for Democratic candidates. And class demonization of people who are already the prime victims in many respects of American capitalism, which is anybody of any racial background from poor or working class, I'm not going to indulge in. I've heard people say Green Deal to say they all union members voted for Trump. Well, that's ridiculous. And using hillbillies to describe more voters is very counterproductive, and it reinforces a narrative the left that has led the broader left abandoning working people like us because we aren't worth the trouble. I think throwing around terms like hillbilly is stupid, lazy, and self-satisfied. And I think that's a great middle note there, right? Never for a second should we ever appeal to or indulge in any form of xenophobia, racism, transphobia, or any other ism that Republicans exploit. And if that's what you're voting on, we're not going to have your vote. It's not our coalition, and it's not who we are. Period. On the other end, you know, restraining yourself from calling people hillbillies and shit, and having some respect for where other people might be from, and recognizing that not every aspects of their life and lifestyle and challenges is defined by being like a gun-owning racist moron. If that's actually what you think, it shows a tremendous lack of exposure to the real world and much broader sets of people and the complexities of their lives. And there's absolutely a middle lane there. And I'm with you. That being said, I mean, I'll engage in any trope and stereotype for impression or comedic purposes because it's funny. But the sort of like Bill Maher overtime, like, do we really want to campaign in Mississippi? I mean, fuck a 13-year-old. You know, like I find it boring and lazy. I don't like that stuff. I think that MR is the only political entertainment show on the broader left that refuses to wallow in delusional, shameful classism. So that's what makes you all the best. Thanks for letting me say my piece here. Well, I'm honored, actually, by that feedback. Lewis 77. At this point, there's no tone or voice of conviction that Ajit Pai could use to sell me anything. He couldn't tell me a gently pre-owned 2016 Tesla model at market value. He's that slimy. Yeah, I agree. Majority Report listener, one of the people in the Ajit Pai Harlem Shake party video is a Pizzagate nutcase. Well, at least one. Brendan, you were saying that earlier.
Yeah, they shared that on the Gizmodo thing. She was just reporting on it in a very earnest way for the Daily Caller on the Daily Caller.
Right. Yeah, and Daily Caller is part of
shocking news, I know.
Yeah,
I mean, the Daily Caller is just a racist blog, basically.
That's what the Daily Caller
set up
is.
by Tucker Carlson.
So
Side boob Gazette for the right.
Right, exactly. I was talking with Ronald Reagan once, who I actually, in fact, consider to be a friend and has given me really helpful advice, and he's a really funny guy. And we were making fun of, I don't know what prompted it, but we were making fun of Tucker Carlson. I totally forgot this. But we were doing and I do Tucker sometimes, and it's that kind of oh, so now I can't say good morning? That's sexist now? No, it's a serious question. That's sexual assault now? And we were going back and forth, and Ronald Reagan was like, I can't call women attractive anymore? That's assault. That's sexist? And he sent me last night, Tucker Carlson literally tweeted that last night. And Reagan wrote, this was funnier. Tucker Carlson stole my impression joke about him to deliver his own joke. And he is, of course, I think the head honcho of the august Daily Caller.
Or he used to be.
It's sort of like, it's kind of like Daily Caller is sort of like the maxim of like Stormfront or InfoWars. You can't quite get the full thing. Snoozin' Sarandon. Apparently, the FCC vote was halted due to security concerns. Whoops! My IM is no longer relevant. Nick from Manitoba. Hey, Michael, great interview today. Given the number of MR listeners tuning in outside the U.S., I was wondering if you could explain the potential implications of net neutrality proposals outside of the U.S., especially Canada. Stay sweet, MR beauties. I don't really think there are many, but I do not know. I'm sure that there are, I would assume that there are interests there who might want to try to do a similar sort of thing, but I don't think that it's just not something I can answer. Super Dank. The J20 defendants, if the J20 defendants and convicted, the First Amendment will become null and void. Well, I know that the incitement to riot charge, I believe, was thrown out.
There's still a number of fairly severe charges.
Okay.
Property damage and stuff like that.
Unbelievable. Kirchhoff argued on Wednesday that Alexei Wood, a photographer who has been charged in the case, was given energy and encouragement to those who were destroying property. This is more than just tacit approval. So her taking a photo of what's happening, could you imagine, and maybe this did happen, I don't know, but if the Chinese authorities arrested somebody who was standing in front of the tank when the Tiananmen Square was cracked down by the government, and the Chinese authorities arrested the person who took that iconic photograph for providing support to public disruption, we would be in endless outrage here. That's literally what's happening in this case. It's a fundamental threat to freedom and journalism and First Amendments of all times. And I'm sorry, I'm going to drag this in again. Where are the I've built an entire YouTube show freaking out about college campus nonsense people on this? You know, I actually do care about the First Amendment. I actually do care about an open society. I actually do think that people, even ones who say odious and disgusting things, should be able to do and say and express what they think. And I certainly think real, actual photojournalists covering a real story should be protected. And I'm just really curious. I haven't seen any segment from a group of people who build their entire content around like, wow, these students at Oberlin they're upset because they think that movie's sexist. Isn't that ridiculous? I'm going to do 40 minutes on it with a Nazi. They don't have anything to say about anything real.
All they're doing is maintaining hierarchies.
All they're doing is maintaining hierarchies. And when actual things happen that in fact do implicate what they're constantly hyperventilating in their fake alternative world version of, when the actual First Amendment is threatened, when prison sentences are actually in place, when there actually is a danger to journalism free expression, they're completely gone. Because, of course, they're pure shills. Alex Capp, enjoyed your live stream of Contra. Enjoyed your live stream of Contra, and not just because you're two of the most attractive people on YouTube. Everyone should check it out. Well, thank you, Alex. I did. That was a lot of fun. I did a live stream with ContraPoint yesterday on her Hangout channel. She is super smart, and we worked through a lot of stuff. We agreed. We had some points of disagreement, points of convergence. She is just an exceptionally smart. Like, that's exactly the type of person. That's a person that even if you disagreed with something on, you will be far better for it, because you will either be persuaded or your disagreement will become so much stronger because you've sort of been held under scrutiny by a very sharp thinker. I really enjoyed talking with her. Everyone should check out her work. Attorney Andrew, Mike, serious question for you. Were you bullied at a debate camp in high school or something? Your go-to trope for nerd sophist, whether it's Ted Cruz or Ben Shapiro, is to label them as offering some, quote, debate club nerd logic, end quote. I have to admit, and I don't usually get my Cade Ragel, I am offended by the notion that I was bullied in high school by anybody, let alone somebody in debate camp. I mean, that was definitely not, this was not high on the social pecking order. I wasn't involved in debate in high school or college, but I did remember there were some kids, not all of whom.
There were a lot of Reagan worshipers in debate when I was in high school.
And I remember in college, look, it was a type. There were some kids that were part of the debate team that were actually like smart, normal, whatever, and they enjoyed figuring arguments out, and they were doing it to beef up their resumes to get into college, or to get into law school, rather. And then there was definitely other, it was a prototype of like these just obnoxious factoid-driven arguments of disingenuous right-wing tools who would just like kind of sit, and if you ever misfortunate enough to like be at the same table with them and say some topic came up, and then you just got like little mini, it was little Ted Cruz, Ben Shapiro shit.
The type of people that do flashcards for logical fallacies.
Exactly. And had zero historical, look, I would say my two kind of for me, the most interesting modes to be in are sort of historical discovery and serious contextualization, or some degree of like actual real emotional empathy. And these people were completely void of both of those things. They had no ability to think broadly and historically in any type of rigorous way. They had no understanding of how the world came to be, only little sort of like kind of petty ways of justifying how it was. And they had zero interest in sort of grokking anybody else's experience. It was very off-putting. Oh, here's the trigger that you have. As a former high school debater who coached and taught in college, I resent this description. There we go. Okay, now I get it. And I will have you know that in the debate community, people like Ted Cruz and Ben Shapiro ostracizes like the weirdos they are. Basically, no one in the community believes that capitalism or conservatism is a good thing. And remember, I'm a patron of TMBS, so my criticism of you is 100% true. Well, wow, really, that was the.
I'm a believer.
Now I'm seeing your rigorous debate school training. Greg.
You're a loser, Michael.
That's supposed to be for TMBS, man. Can't have worlds cross-pollinating like that. Greg. Oh, it's Greg. Listen, guys, listen to this I am for Greg. And maybe you'll experience some of what I experience every time he calls. Greg. Bring Greg as a guest on the show. They've been saying it, and I've been thinking it. Who's been saying it, Greg? Like the fake accounts that you write under? I mean,
Greg Call.
There's your guest appearance. I mean, dude, I have encountered people who have said, when Peter Thiel talks, it's mean, or give Greg more time to make the same point he's been making for 5 years. I have not encountered any sentient being, and I'm just going to continue. I'm sorry. I just simply refuse to even consider the fact that there are IMers independently of you. IMing to request you would be a guest. I just don't accept that as a probability. I don't accept that as possible. I have not encountered anyone who thinks it would be a good programmatic choice to have you as a guest, Greg. You know what the problem is, Greg, is whatever. God, man, you've had like 15-minute phone calls, for Christ's sake. What do you want? You're calling from a 423 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mikey, it's Zach in Tennessee. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. How are you, brother?
Well, I just wanted to let you know that the Alabama Mall Police have a code for when Roy Moore comes in. They get on their radios, and this is it. It's like, sassy horse has a rider. I repeat, sassy horse has a rider. Okay? That's the signal. So, Anyway, bad joke. But did you see him try to ride the horse? That was pretty, like, sports bloopers worthy.
I did notice that. I was saying I don't remember where I said this, whether it was on air or not. But I don't like I've ridden a horse a few times, but I don't like that's not something I do, or it's not like something I know. But when I saw it, I was like, is he bad at that? And I kept my mouth shut because I really don't know. But I intuitively, it just seemed to me like analogy I could draw. If somebody's like holding a tennis racket weird, I know that, right? Because I play tennis, and it looked to me like that doesn't look right. And I kept my mouth shut. But then I think it was Brendan, maybe Matt, or maybe both of them. They were like, they actually do know something about this, and they're like, that dude does not know how to ride a horse. He didn't put his 10,000 hours in on riding. He put his 10,000 hours in on being at the mall. Boom.
I don't think so.
Made a Gladwell meets pedophilia joke at Roy Moore's expense. 2017, everybody.
Well, let me ask you this. I was seeing a lot of bad Twitter, what I call like far left Twitter takes.
Mm-hmm.
About how the Democrats really didn't do that well by beating Moore because, we're not going to get to face a pedophile in every race, yada, yada. Some guy named Walker Bragman just, kind of expounding that notion. And a lot. Did you see some of the, like, what you would call the dumb responses to Moore's, to Jones' win?
To be honest with you, there's some people now that I just don't even like. Part of when I first coined that phrase, even though it was adversarial, I was holding like a 10% chance that there might be some people at some platforms that might come to their senses and realize that, like, a year into the fucking like Blade Runner administration, that doing like endless segments on like, Hillary Clinton or why you don't like MSNBC or whatever is not like the top priority right now. But I think that so there's certain people that I just tune out. Like, they have a business model, they're doing their thing. Occasionally, they might even do something of value. I mean, it's not like I'm not a fan of them. But so part of it I just don't tune into. In my world, which is like more of like, the kind of like smarter, more like actual kind of socialist-y sort of like Jacobin kind of world.
Yes.
I almost uniformly saw people either like that wasn't on their front radar, which kind of makes sense, or they were happy. And I saw a couple of people making that joke. I mean, it's a funny joke because, because centrists were also trying to use it to say like, see, this means that now we should, run center-right Democrats, and they use their kind of bullshit on it as well, which I don't think this is the lesson of. But I didn't see that much of it, but I'm also not, I'm not looking at Tim Black's Twitter. There's like a certain amount of idiocy that I'm not tuning into right now.
If I may, what brought my attention to it was Dave Weigel, subtweeting an North Alabama DSA member who said that she was going to stay home because, and this got retweeted a million times to the point where even Howard Dean was kind of chiding this person how that she was going to stay home because Doug Jones is an imperfect candidate, and it just made me want to just punch a hole through a cardboard
I don't
box.
think that's typical of DSA.
I think DSA is typically smarter than that.
Yeah, I don't think that's reflective. And I mean, I also think like,
well, good. I hope so.
I don't think so. I mean, and I certainly, I don't know a single person on my sort of zone of politics who was not at the very least relieved at what happened. So yeah.
Well, great takedown on Ben Shapiro. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Well, whatever. All right, you're wrong. Bye bye.
That's the great Ben Shapiro impression. Thanks, man. Okay. Omarosa is gone. I didn't even know what her official title was. something crazy. Let's just do these. There were two really awesome responses to Omarosa leaving. The first one we're going to play is with, what's her name? It's Angela Rye, right? So this is a little less surprising. Angela Rye is a CNN commentator. She's on like the opinion side of the business, and she knows how to make, she knows how to do this. She
throw some bombs.
She knows how to throw some bombs. She knows how to get in the kind of bloodstream. This is really funny, and she's on a split screen with four other. I know she's on with
and Simone Sanders, who did comms for Bernie.
Okay, Simone Sanders, who did comms for Bernie. Brooke Baldwin, who's leading it. And then where's April Ryan from?
She's from Urban Radio.
Oh, that's April Ryan.
Yeah, she.
Oh, that's the woman at the press conference. Yeah, that's the White House correspondent.
Yeah, and she broke the story on her.
And she broke the story on Omarosa. Omarosa apparently needing to be escorted out of the White House, and Trump must have been really enjoying that. It sounds like an old episode of The Apprentice. And basically, Angela Rye has, just exactly the type of response that generally we should have to anybody that is associated with this administration. And it's a funny little segment.
I want to talk about the black vote too, but Brooke, I'm going to do what you can't do, and what April and Simone are too good of people to do, and that's just going to be petty for a minute.
Oh, Angela. Oh,
bye,
Angela.
girl.
Oh,
bye.
Angela.
We did it already on the podcast, April, but bye, honey. You have never represented the community. You are skin folk. We don't own you like Zora. Goodbye. Good riddance. Goodbye. Deuces.
Angela, you know I have much love for you, but you know what? I don't delight in anyone's demise.
That I'm not delighting in her demise. I wish her the best, but
I do delight in people's demise. I think it's great. That was really funny. And Angela, you know what? Knowing that is the same journalist that has to talk to Sarah Huckabee Sanders every day, and she still is saying that she doesn't delight in other people's demise, is amazing to me. Like, if I had her job, I would, like, the amount of just sort of like negative Deepak Chopra type of visualization exercises I would have for multiple people's demise would be just sort of like unending.
Welcome to the Demise Appreciation Society.
Yeah. That was great. Oh, that was beautiful. Brendan?
I was just going to say, for those curious about what Omarosa's official title was,
yes,
it was Assistant to the President and Communications Director for the Office of Public Liaison.
Sounds about right. Now, as I say, Angela Rye is, that's a part of her job. She does it well. She's supposed to do that kind of content. Give smart analysis, have an opinion, push it. Robbins is a total, excuse me. Oh, it was Robin Roberts is definitely not in the punditry side of it. She's a, supposed to be kind of like a, anchor morning host. I mean, it's morning, so I guess it's a little bit looser. But I was not expecting this from her in response to the Omarosa firing.
Celia and goodbye, and I don't know if she's ever going to have a relationship with him again. Yeah, the fourth time could be the charm.
Yes, so she said she has a story to tell, and I'm sure she'll be selling that story.
We'll see.
Well, yeah, she will. Bye, Felicia. Now to a new study.
Wow. Omarosa really rubs people the wrong way.
Wonder why. Wonder why these women are upset with her.
She just Friday her.
Skinfolk is something I had never heard before either. It's like kinfolk, but saying that we're just similar because we have the same skin color.
That was like when Al Sharpton had some line years ago where he said something about Clarence Thomas, where he's like, he might be my color, but he's not my kind. The thing, though, as amusing as this is, and kind of like getting us back to the essence of Trump, the Omarosa thing, it does open up some disturbing sort of trends we're seeing in the administration, which is that, the military-industrial complex is really in control here, while you have this crazy, horrible baby running the show, supposedly. Actually, next week on TMBS, Corey Pine and I are doing an illicit primer on who's really in control and this sort of romanticization of these very dangerous characters from the military-industrial complex that are getting all of this fawning press coverage by, I don't know, apparently they're keeping Trump from doing horrible things. Seems to me he's doing plenty of horrible things, even with this supposed adult oversight. And in fact, they like that he's doing a lot of these horrible things, like dropping the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan and increasing global civilian casualties. That's one end of serious and rigorous speculation. But the other part that does bear noting is that I think now with Omarosa gone, does that leave it as a one black member of the Trump? I mean, Omarosa wasn't in the cabinet.
Are we considering the guy who holds the nuclear football part of the team?
He's my nuclear Negro, but I wouldn't consider him part of the inner circle. There's one person, and who knows, maybe Trump might give him the nuclear football sometimes as a joke.
We tried to get Sheriff Clark in at the Pentagon or something, but didn't.
He jumped the gun.
Yeah.
He jumped the gun. Ben Carson remains. And we've started to think, and we need some music for this segment, what if in this administration of charlatans and just sort of just like the lowest forms of humanity imaginable, the worst people on the planet, a group of just disgusting D-listers and then military industrialists, that behind all of it, the sort of out-of-it, mushy-headed, God talked to me after I stabbed the guy in the belt buckle guy. What if it's all part of a plan? Power is like a house that you buy with proceeds from fake supplements in a multi-level marketing company. Now that Omarosa is gone, I can commit to phase 3 of the plan. If you look at the line of succession, I'm number 13 in the line of succession. 13 is bad luck for a lot of other people, but 13 was the same date that I stabbed my cousin in the face and the laceration magically healed because God wanted me to go to Yale. Look it up. Oh wait, don't. I made it up. He wanted to fire me, and I looked at the president and I said, don't you mean you want to fire that other black person over there? Omarosa? Ahead of me, Eric Hargan is at number 12 in the line of succession. He's going to wake up with a horse's head in his bed soon with a note from the Seventh-day Adventist chapter in Detroit. Then, after Ryan Singel dies in a plane crash in Puerto Rico, the whole thing will come into view, and I'll exercise that greatest of medical miracles, power. I'll operate on the American brainstem. I'm coming. Watch my moves. Ben Carson, House of Cards, man. It's coming.
I can't believe they haven't optioned that yet in the fallout from Kevin Spacey. Chris Rock is.
Chris Rock is, yeah. Chris Rock would really need to calm down a lot to play that role, man.
Chris Rock slowed down to half speed.
Yeah, right. Is this a new Charles Barkley?
No, that's old.
Oh, okay, it's an old one. Charles Barkley was on point yesterday, man.
Barkley 2020.
And now, just to show everybody, in case you were like Sam, and Sam was in the office earlier, and we played that Robin Roberts saying goodbye, Felicia, to Omarosa. We got you because we thought of the members of the audience who were like Sam, who said, "What's bye, Felicia? What does that mean? Her name's not Felicia, it's Omarosa. Do you see?" It is a term that comes from the 1990s vehicle Friday. Sam apparently was in contention to play the Chris Tucker role. It's a film with Chris Tucker and Ice Cube. We're going to play a little clip from this just so you can know where the Bye Felicia comes from.
Need to borrow a job with your broke ass. Always trying to smoke up somebody's shit. The hell on, Felicia. Remember that. Remember it. Write it down. Take a picture. I don't give a fuck.
Chris, Bye, Felicia.
Well, there it is. Bend over. I think this is Greg. Greg. You give me an opportunity to govern my emotions and practice patience. I have a suggestion. Okay, guys, does this not sound like... Just okay, I have a suggestion. You know what? If this is something that this audience wants, just email us. If you're not Greg or Jimmy Reefercake. Why not make Libertarian Friday and get Greg and Jimmy Reefercake on the show to debate? Jimmy can make a song for the occasion, and Greg can just bring a jetpack.
Libertarian Friday, so they get one day of one entire day of a week? I don't think it's that prominent, guys.
No, we don't.
It's not a serious philosophy. It's
right.
Motivated reasoning of oligarchs.
That's all we're doing here. The whole point of having libertarians call is that this toxic pseudo-philosophy that is the sort of like fantasy life fulfillment of corporate oligarchs, it can be debunked in a way that's sort of amusing and travels on YouTube. That's it. Nothing more to it.
It's not the clash of ideas of our time. It's not serious.
It's fundamentally unserious. The only part of it that's serious is actually just how this sort of unbelievable level of immorality you can inject into the bloodstream using the proper buzzwords. Okay, Sam I Am, that's another Greg thing. Kelly, what's your number? Great show last Friday. I have a message for new Kelly. Shoot me your number, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is
hilarious.
Yeah, okay.
Jokes.
Contagious Chameleon. With net neutrality being undone with the new tax bill, it seems that the Republicans don't understand the consequences of these actions. This is borne out by their misunderstanding that sales drive demand, not profit. If they think a general strike is bad, what happens when we have a self-inflicted, involuntary general boycott because nobody has a job or money? Are Republicans aware they're going to cause the economy to permanently collapse? More prisons, beefed up private security forces, lower wages for the low-end economy to do service jobs, and then private bunkers and gated communities. That's the plan. That's the plan. Riley Cayley, right? Ringosphere is perhaps the best term ever coined on this show, and at least I've never heard it anyway. Sweet. Pajama boy rep Blake Farenthold says he won't seek re-election in 2018. Better yet, Paul freaking Ryan tells confidence he's retiring after the midterm elections. That's amazing. Just got to get through this kill the people bill. It's like, if I could look at my kids and think about all the homelessness that I increased, the children that can't eat, the just massive enhanced human suffering, then I can think I did a job well done. Only question I have, what does after mean? Iron Stash is beating Ryan in the polls now. Is that true? So is Ryan carrying GOP so is Rush carrying water for the GOP or what? Doug Jones does not support gun control.
He's carrying water for Rush.
Yeah. Doug Jones does not support gun control, plus wouldn't back Medicare for all. Gun control, look, I'm not going to expect gun control from an Alabama Senate candidate. Sorry. Period. Medicare for all, he's probably scared by it. Maybe he is compromised by corporate contributions, but I actually think in the future, when he's running for re-election, he would find it quite profitable to tell everybody in a very poor state that they should get full health care coverage. Can you spell the name of the person you said you were on the Google Hangout with? I'd like to look for it. ContraPoints. CONTRA points. POINTS. Turd Ferguson, I created this account about a week ago. I haven't had time to IM, but I thought the name was clever. I see it's been taken on air. Well, whatever, I'm sticking with it. 2016, 2017 kind of sucked. I'm glad we're getting back to normal by kicking off 2018 with a reality TV star as leader of the free world, a Democrat representing Alabama in the Senate, and Bill Maher somehow miraculously not being one of the people accused of sexual misconduct. Okay. Seriously, am I one of the only people that are surprised by this? I mean, look, I think that people you look, you shouldn't confuse, like, I don't know, like Bill Maher, as far as we know, and maybe this will change, I don't know. He likes to date younger women. He's into having sex, whatever. I mean, that's certainly not anything I want to know or think about in any way, shape, and form. But I haven't heard anything that he hasn't done anything consensually or anything like that. So, c'est la vie. And that said, it's absolutely shocking. I simply cannot believe it. The International Herald, it's done. 3-2, party line dotes, no more net neutrality. Call Congress now. Call Congress now. This is just the beginning. We're going to make all these motherfuckers pay in 2018 and 2020. From the hip, much of the antitrust discourse, including about the internet today, is ultimate form of liberal cuckery, is ultimately these companies should be nationalized. I completely agree with you. The snow in Winterfell. Hey, Michael, I made calls about the FCC. I spoke to the offices of Fragelson, Booker, Menendez, Cornyn, McConnell, and when I got Schumer, I got a staffer on the line. He said the FCC does change the rules. They would almost immediately be sued by hundreds of organizations, and then afterwards, Democrats would pursue legislative remedies. Yep, I believe they. I'm sure Democrats. I mean, that's not going to go anywhere, but there will be lawsuits. And then that's another part of the chain of why voting matters, because then it goes to courts where different people appoint different kinds of judges. But yes, this fight is far from over. What about capitalist pigs, spacely commos? Even George Jetson is under the thumb of the bourgeoisie. I got to be honest with you, I did not watch the Jetsons.
Coswell Cogs.
Never hard.
The boss.
Got you. I didn't know if you got to read it yesterday, but this is my IM from yesterday. Matt, can you talk about your Orwell tweet? I tend to think educated voters are responsible for who they vote for and can take partial blame for some policies. Can you talk about why Jimmy's post made Orwell seem anti-democratic? I want to learn more about your perspective and see if I got things wrong. Thanks.
Yeah, first of all, it was a fake Orwell quote. Second of all, I knew it was a fake Orwell quote because, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, it was basically like if a society installs leaders that are thieves, the voting population aren't victims, they're complicit. And the simple point is that when you foreground the demos, to get Greek for a second, that in an oligarchy, it shows what your politics are, because clearly, like, the inputs aren't being decided by the people. There's like a huge, like, Trump's inheritance. There's all sorts of different factors that lead to who gets in charge, and it's not the people. So that's why that quote's anti-democratic.
Right. That's right. Joseph Ball, tell your congressman right now that there should be no vote on the tax bill till Doug Jones is sworn into office. Respect the will of the voters. Absolutely. Call him. Just
one more quote about the educated thing. Like, educated, the liberal education, sort of progress and the progressive movement in the early century failed. Like, that's where we're at right now. Like, we failed to educate people properly so they could suss out this. And it's not just education. It's giving them the time to be able to work through these issues on their own instead of working like 70 hours a week or 50 hours a week. So it's all these different things rather than making it an individual choice of the voter, which that's why that quote is terrible and insidious.
And reinforces a fundamentally reactionary right-wing viewpoint. Pajama Boy, hey Michael, what do you think of Nomiki Kant's newfound romance with Donna Brazile? I didn't realize that they were a couple. Sorry, I'm being hacky. Love the show. Left is best. I don't know. It's not something I'm following. My guess would be that I have some genuine questions about this caucuses versus primaries thing that I would like to talk with Nomiki about. I think of many of her other reform initiatives I am 100% on board with. I love her exposure of the consulting class in the DNC, which is just completely failed and totally parasitic and dangerous to democratic politics. Look, Donna Brazile, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, it's cool. Like, the lesson with Donna Brazile is just like, Leslie Lee III, the co-host of Struggle Session, he's made this really smart point where he said during the primary, when Tulsi Gabbard broke for Bernie, he said, this is great because now like a more right-leaning opportunist sees how successful this push is. So whatever Donna Brazile's, and Donna Brazile, look, I mean, she has a very likable and appealing personality in many ways, right? But yeah, she's a total machine Democrat, and not someone who I would consider to be terribly progressive, but I think that she does have a concern for the party. She does want it to be successful. And the fact that she's reading the tea leaves as the right side of this is the insurgency and the left, awesome. Great. It's a good sign. So cool. I don't I think other than in politics, maybe there's people that you encounter sometimes where you have to say, like, either someone has done something so egregious that you shouldn't partner with them, or somebody is like sort of like fundamentally untrustworthy or something. But in general, it's like, this is a game, especially in the world of fucking dealing with reforming the DNC. You make alliances, you make deals. I mean, that is politics. I want people who have good politics who operate effectively in those zones. And it seems to me that Nomiki's somebody like that.
Yeah, that's basically, she was on with the Chapo Boys this weekend. It was basically making that point in working with the DNC now on this council, that Donna Brazil, after what she found out, has come to the defense of the Bernie people and herself, and she really appreciates her stepping out and extending that olive branch to them.
And that's awesome. It's great. Dumb Dumb Bright. No. People are getting it wrong. We should be happy to let progressives win, because when the American people wake up, we'll have an alt-right revolution. I voted for the candidate with a clean coal deal. George Sully, primary schools use washing machines to wash children's uniforms. Children's charging parents' phones because they have no electricity at home. The GPS treating kids for rickets. This is poverty we have in the UK in 2017. Yep, that's austerity. Okay, I'm going to take a few more calls. Again, apologies today. Definitely am not going to get to all of them, so I just have to apologize in advance. I'll try to get to a few. You're calling from a 203 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Jay.
What's up, Jay? How you doing?
I wanted to talk about open access, net neutrality.
Yep.
There's no way we can have a workable internet without extraordinary government intervention or outright nationalizing.
I agree.
Heavy regulation would be helpful, but you really would have to nationalize. Yep. I would draw the comparison between the railroads of the 19th century and the interstate highway system of the 1950s, and the functionality of that. And one actually allowed a free flow, and the other was robber barons and all kinds of mayhem and murder. So basically, each internet service provider, they have a disincentive to build a better network.
Right.
They do not want to build a better network. If AT&T, say, were to build the new ultra high speed network, they wouldn't be able to charge customers more. People are already paying as much as they can pay for data delivery to their homes in terms of their household budget. Your guest, I forget his name, pointed out what Whitaker said, who was my boss for 10 years. He said that these other companies want to use my pipes for free, and that's nuts. Mm-hmm. But the pipes are only in a loose sense are his. The technology was all developed and underwritten by the U.S. government. But most important, the right of way is where his pipes are all laid out. They're under America's streets. They're in front of everybody's house. They have cables going by. He is being allowed to make some money exploiting public property.
Right.
And his attitude is, there is no public. It's my property.
Right.
And this is not the case. So we have to basically reorient people's thinking that it's not okay to mine gold and poison the water for a 100-mile, 200-mile radius. This whole mentality is really sick. So there's no reason for these guys to build a better right now the only profit they can see grabbing without spending money is to do this multi-tiered system of content control. And so they're already socking consumers. Now they want to get content providers and sock them, or control content and own it. So what we're seeing is, your guest said it was Ajit Pai's proposal was very radical, and indeed it is. But we have to see something equally radical pushing in the opposite
I agree
direction.
100%. I think that I totally think there should be.
What would stimulate that?
I mean, I would be very interested to see what someone like Bernie formulates before running for president, because it's clear that, you know, the protections put in place in 2015 weren't vigorous or structural enough. And I think in general, there's a lot of I don't know what the policy mechanisms are, but there is going to have to be some form of either direct nationalization or such intense regulation that these companies are seriously brought down to size and treated like basic utilities, which is what they are. And I agree with you, it implicates every other part of the whole chain, because the pipe people are just exploiting public resources and sort of profiting off of their own, in fact, their own sort of public commons, and kind of getting a free lunch themselves. So I agree with you. I mean, the thing that's interesting about net neutrality, what I was trying to get to earlier, is that if you follow the logic of it, it has major implications for how we both govern the future of the internet, and we also kind of claw back the commons in general from corporate interests.
Absolutely, and as your guest was pointing out, individuals would be able to, take advantage of the free market in the true sense, because they would have the same chance at doing whatever business they conduct,
exactly,
as any other company. But looking at the interstate highway system model, libertarians now would decry that. They would say that never should have been built with public money.
Oh, of course,
that it's unconstitutional,
right.
And the way Eisenhower muscled it in was to say, we need this for national security so we can move our troops and our hardware around the country.
Right.
And they have to probably have a similar dumb appeal to get people to consider, a proper, free and open internet.
I don't know about that. My sense is, if we were to look just more broadly now, I think that on the side of issues that are clustered in, say, everything from, income inequality, corporate power, national health care, net neutrality, fighting monopolies, I think that you'll find that these are actually outside of that crazy cult base. They're very, very broadly appealing to a broad general public. And the reason that they're not implemented, and the reason what stands in front of them, is simply raw economic power. I think the ideological stuff is a lot easier to puncture. And then I think on the flip side, in our fight for, against racism and transphobia and all, those battles, I think that it's the flip. I think that in certain ways, particularly with just kind of like obvious sort of like basic, not structurally addressing it, but representation and other important things, obviously a lot of the elite and money centers don't object to that in some ways. They object to it structurally, but you take my point. And then inside the culture, there's real serious, bigotry and xenophobia and things like that actually really do have to be kind of fought. But I think in general, if you kind of made the case to people like, look, this is how we're going to protect the internet from your fucking useless cable companies. And incidentally, maybe you still want to use Amazon and Google and whatever else, but you want to make sure that they aren't completely owning the market or misusing your personal information, or, I think most people who are normal people are going to be pretty receptive to that. And you see it certainly in the polling on net neutrality. Most Republicans definitely support preserving net neutrality.
Well, I talk to people here. I say, in terms of government control, I said, do you approve of the FAA, You think that would be pretty uncontroversial, but they'll say, we could probably manage that on a county level.
Wow. Well, that's the type of insanity that I don't encounter every day. Oh man, that's crazy. All right, Jay. On that disconcerting note, I leave you for today, but I'm sure we will talk soon.
And best regards, gentlemen.
Thank you. You're calling from a 610 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
Yep, this is you.
Oh, hey, Michael. How you doing? This is Mr. PJ Plastino from Philadelphia.
Hey, what's up? What's going on?
Not much, man. Great live stream with ContraPoints last night. Enjoyed it very much.
Oh, appreciate it.
So I'll just make it real brief. I'm just here to talk some shit on some right-wingers.
Nice.
Basically, the woman that you were mentioning in the Ajit Pai video is Martina Markota or something like that. And basically, I was digging in on her a little bit with Twitter because she was just basically just trying to distance herself. Well, I never said Pizzagate. I was like, there's a video, which you conveniently scrubbed off your YouTube page. There's also, here in Philadelphia, our boy Mike Cernovich decided to try and go after one of our great council members who is trying to put some regulation in place in what they're called like these stop-and-go stores that we have here in Philadelphia. Basically, these guys, they call it a deli, but it's not a deli. There's nowhere to sit. There's nothing like that. So, of course, Mike, in classic, trying to, what he did to Sam, take the words completely out of context, call the woman racist, say all the stuff she's saying is racist, and so forth and so on. But,
right.
Yeah, there was a pretty decent article up. I forget the author's name, but it's on a local website we have here called BillyPenn.com. But I'm going to leave with this because I know you got other people.
Well, and it didn't not work. I mean, how is she now? Like, what happened?
Well, no, I mean, she basically, just kept the stiff upper lip and was like, I don't care what these guys have to say. They're clowns.
That's really what it's right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm not sure about the vote because I think they're still in session at the moment at City Hall because I believe the vote is today. But there's a very good, strong indication that it's going to pass because it is a quality of life thing where she made a great point of like who has a deli and hands a pastrami sandwich through a window, because again, she said if you guys want to operate the way you're operating, just put chairs out and have a public bathroom. Be a restaurant.
Right.
Don't be this quick fly-by-night store calling yourself a deli so you can sell booze.
Right.
But the question I want to leave to you guys,
sure.
And of course, like I said, you got other callers.
Yeah, got to make it real tight.
It's basically just like, I mean, are we now about to live in an episode of Black Mirror? Like, is that what's happening now with the internet? Because, it just seems like more and more as we go through day by day, like it's turning into some crazy dystopian shit, and hopefully there's a pushback, but I'm nervous about it, man. I'm really nervous that we're actually going to be able to go back to what it was. I mean, we've lost so much in so many regards of our society since last year, since this guy was elected.
Look, dude, I hear you. I think on some level, some of this stuff is just a choice. Like, I choose to not frame it. Look, there's times where it's just like, why not just go and get a job at like some brand agency and just sort of like party until this whole thing is over. Because it's totally hopeless, but I don't think that, and I think that there are countervailing forces, and we got to think about the people who don't have the luxury of cynicism, and we can use. I mean, you have to somehow balance being totally real and fully present with how truly horrible it is, and also not succumb to despair, because fundamentally despair is counter-revolutionary.
The best way to remember that is to remember it's always been truly horrible.
That's also true. I mean, I think people need to it's a very hard thing to communicate because there's some people it's like they're very invested in Trump. There's nothing. There already was, mass inequality, police murdering people of color, drone strikes, all of this, right? We know that Wall Street hoarding money, destroying the economy. And so And yes, we're at a different phase now. We've gone to a hyper level with Trump. But at the same time, I mean, I think, at the same time, like, look, Jeremy Corbyn, I think, is going to be the next UK prime minister. This fees must fall movement is across, southern Africa fighting austerity. I mean, there's things happening in environmental and tech innovation and media that
I guess
you just have to choose. I mean, that's honestly that's all I could tell you. You can everything I'm saying.
To leave on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm just sorry, just to leave on this. I guess what has like the bum with it, aside from my little problems with depression or whatever. I guess what it is that at least with the Republicans of old and the GOP of old, they at least followed process. And these guys now with Trump, it's total just
look back into the Bush. What did you say?
I think that's a means to the same end, though. Now that the mask is off, like, all the better for us. We can keep this going.
I think that there's value, as I said earlier. There's less bullshit, and also look back in the Bush administration. They weren't process followers, man. I mean, people. It's all like, it's not shocking to people. But
Nixon scuttled the peace talks.
Nixon scuttled the peace talks in Vietnam to get elected president. Ronald, the Reagan administration, at the most minimal benign aspect, turned a blind eye to mass cocaine trafficking to fund weapons for groups that burned villages and killed nuns and lied to Congress about it.
Yeah.
And in the Bush administration, like, this isn't just some data point. They actively distorted and hyped intelligence to invade a country. Like, that is no small feat, man. That's real shit.
Yeah, I get, I just keep plugging through,
Keep plugging through.
As I get older and just seeing this shit as it keeps unfolding, it's like, it kind of feels like inundated with it, I guess.
Oh, I get that. Well, I would take breaks and do other things and take runs, watch movies, see friends, whatever it is, because it's like, this is all consuming, and there's a lot more to life than this.
There's a lot of good things in all of our lives that we can be grateful for every day. That's what my buddy on base in Germany tells me. If you're listening, John, thanks.
Look at that.
Well, hey, there's the majority report, 12 to 2, Monday through Friday.
Well, and I would say even more significantly, the Michael Brooks Show live. 7
Oh, of course. CMBS, baby.
That's correct. All right, brother. Hang in there.
All right, boys. Thank you, and I'll see you on Twitter.
Thanks for calling, man. Bye-bye.
No problem.
All right, last see you on Twitter. Maybe that's what you should be taking a break from, my brother. That is not a mood elevator. Okay, you've been on for 86 minutes, so I'm going to take this call, but this is the last call. I'm sorry for everybody else, and we do have to be pretty tight. You're calling from an 812 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Doug from Indiana.
Hey, Doug, what's going on?
Okay, so to trim it up, I have 2 points. One is the Trump administration kind of winds up being a value for the basically any Republican administration would want to do some of the things that they're doing, but this net neutrality thing, there'd be more fight for it, except for we're all exhausted. Outrage exhaustion is just too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that point. And
I actually think people are doing a lot on this, though. I don't know if that's true. I think people are actually putting in a ton of energy on net neutrality.
It's just not going to be enough all the time.
I think that there'd be more.
Well,
and then if there'd been a John Kasich or someone else in office.
Maybe so.
So my other point, the thing I called for, maybe I've missed something. I'm thinking I should be upset with more upset with McCabe and Rosenstein from their hearings in Congress the other day. So the argument I've been hearing is, the Mueller investigation had this guy that had massive anti-Trump tweets and all that type of stuff, and that makes the Mueller investigation biased. But isn't the defense easily just that guy got fired for being anti-Trump? What am I missing?
I'm not. Was this the thing with the FBI agents were texting each other?
Yeah,
I'm not.
Trump but what did Rosenstein say about it? I thought Rosenstein said he hasn't seen anything that would make him want to fire Mueller.
Yeah, well, they just kind of gave wishy-washy. Is this, well, if we see anything type things, but
I mean, look,
honestly,
I was shocked that, honestly, like, doing this in this environment as an FBI agent, maybe those people should be fired from the case because they're fucking idiots. Like, that's a shockingly stupid thing to do, not substantively, of course, but, you know, that's exactly the type of trivial nonsense that the Trump people will seize on. But I don't think it's a particularly big story. Thanks for the call, man.
The point is, though, is that you can't use that as an argument. Oh, that guy is an anti-Trump because the guy got fired for it.
Right.
So,
but you know, again, we're talking about Trump and we're talking about Republicans, so they'll use anything.
This is about power. It's not about the logic.
Yeah, it's not about the logic.
Watch Fox News for 25 minutes.
Just about the power.
It's the defense of the Mueller investigation. Why aren't they making that logical argument?
Well, that's what we got to make. I don't.
That guy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't watch their testimony. I think though that from the perspective of how we respond to it, it's I mean.
I basically saw that Rosenstein said, I haven't seen anything to implicate Mueller, so that was my takeaway from that.
That's sufficient. Why get into and I think especially if you're in that situation, why carve any broader ground? Just keep it tight and bureaucratic. I haven't seen anything to implicate Mueller. What's the next question?
Okay.
Appreciate the call, man.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, everybody. A few more IMs, then we're out of here. What were you going to say, Brendan?
I was just going to say, if you give Republicans any daylight with this stuff, they will seize on it, and you can just watch a day of Fox News and just see how quickly they can ramp it up and weaponize it.
Yeah, that's all they do.
So good at it. They're so much better than we are at it.
And that's because that's all they are. Like, I understand, and I accept the point that Nathan Robinson makes as an example that, you know, people like Ben Shapiro and all these other kind of ludicrous figures have exploited the angle of saying like, hey, you just dismiss me as a bigot, but you're not addressing my arguments. So we need to start going through the exhausting, laborious, and silly process of actually taking people like Ben Shapiro seriously as thinkers so we can get back to the point of calling them bigots. But we have to do that work. But that being said, fundamentally as like a user manual on the left, think of a Republican. First of all, it's all power and it's all being corporate bagmen. That's it. That's what it's all reduced to that. There's nothing else at work. Even if, yes, some of them are crazy. Maybe some of them really believe it, blah, blah.
The ones that really believe it are especially useful. People looking to give money to someone that will just do that on their own.
Exactly. But the fundamental thing is deliver goods to the top end of America and the donors. That's it. And then what all Republicans are, whether they're quote-unquote public intellectuals or a senator, is that they are a PR product and a propagandist for a certain set of policies. A set of policies that are either designed to gin up bigotry in the population or more fundamentally redistribute wealth. That's it. No other way to understand it. And you just got to look at it in those terms. There's no room for any Republican to you know, it's never a logic game. Roy Moore Shul. I waited patiently for the Lord, just as I waited in Shabbat outside of the food court. Okay. He waited and you heard me cry. All right, I'm sorry. I can't do all of this. Maybe shoot it again another time. It's funny, but it's not funny enough. Let's see. Midnight Pizza Mon. Matt, I used flashcards in high school and college to remember fallacies. So when debunking trickle-down idiots or misogynists or stupid bros in general, I could explain to them why their arguments sucked, and it was an easy way to find multiple ways to play with their logic. Hashtag not all debate nerds.
I have read some. I have some fallacy experience myself, but I just think you need to know the limits of it.
And also, no, Midnight Pizza Man, I am not going on a date tonight. Left is a European. Yesterday on the Michael Brooks show, you called the EU impotent. This is not true. Last week, the EU Council wrote a list of tax haven countries which they will eventually forcefully and consistently enforce, not enforce, which they will forcefully and consistently not enforce. Oh, I see what you're saying. Sad. Yes. Well, I was talking specifically with their leverage on the so-called peace process. The Mad Mailman reports say the FCC removed the 2015 regulations about 20 minutes ago. Yes, they did. Chris Lapaco. Let Greg come on the show, but he can't wear a shirt. He's got a video where he's topless online or something. I couldn't pay attention. Blah, blah. All right. Come on. Greg, no shirt Friday. Be nice. What is this video that we have up? What's the sound? It's talking about abortion being okay, we'll save it. Jimmy Durr. Greg seems nice, but he's unbearable. Jimmy Reefercake's an idiot. Obviously, don't give them a segment. Obviously, I'd be fine dumping Jimmy's stupid songs. I'm right in assuming this Friday is about Hillary. Jimmy Reefercake. Yeah, sure, dumbass. I had a debate with Lapaco, moderated by Isha. It was a slugfest. You talk about power as an alternative to logic? Wrong again, son. All right.
Sure.
Hoagie, net neutrality fight isn't over. Call your congresspersons. Tell them to use the Congressional Review Act, pass a resolution of disapproval, and overturn vote. Yes, just keep it pushing. Look, polite, firm, informed, relentless on all of these issues. Make their lives a living hell with phone calls, emails, nonviolent protests, and shame. Because everybody part of this agenda should live in shame and infamy for the rest of their lives. They're voting to destroy democracy, undermine journalism, kill innovation, and more generally, just kill people. And they should know it. And they should get the calls and the IMs and the nonviolent protests and all form of civic pressure at all times. Heretical Christian wanted to let you guys know that the purchase of Fox's Entertainment by Disney went through today. Let's see. Cuck Todd, disappointed. My wife's really disappointed. She was a huge supporter of net neutrality. I'm not going to do the hashtag. See, I'm a little bit more forgiving than Sam. That you went into overt vulgarity. Stillmatic intro. Black cheat sheet. The phrase you heard before was shorthand for all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Yes. Thank you. And let's see. What was that, Brendan?
There's a tweet.
What is a tweet?
There was a tweet from Ashley Feinberg this morning that I just came across where she has a photo from Sean Spicer's Instagram.
Right.
And it's a photo of FDR's copy of A Christmas Carol.
Right.
By Dickens on display. And the caption from Sean Spicer is FDR's Book of Christmas Carols. And I just thought it was hilarious that Sean Spicer thinks this novel by Charles Dickens is not about, Christmas, but a collection of songs written by Dickens.
The only Spicer, and this is just a reflection. Like, the reality is that, look, yes, the way this works is that now Sarah Huckabee's out there every day, and she is just a different league of just utterly reprehensible, despicable, grotesque persons. So Sean Spicer, that's just the way reality works. I'll bang on about how horrible George W. Bush is every day, but there are going to be moments where you're like, wow, that was like when Bush said, don't attack people who own gas stations. That was a nice contrast. Sean Spicer, there's something I think in his kind of anxiety and just sort of shamefacedness. There was some fraction of him, and in some ways this maybe makes him even worse, but he knew he was doing wrong on some level. He knew
totally
that he was a propagandist for the worst administration. He knew that he and everything he was involved with and represented and worked with were just the most disgusting people imaginable. He knew it on some level. Sarah Huckabee's just sort of yeah, we're the most disgusting people imaginable and I enjoy it. She has no flicker of humanity.
She revels in it.
Yes, she enjoys.
This is my side. That's yours.
And that's yours. Maybe you're on the side of humanity. I'm just on the side of just descending into the depths of the worstness of all, and I enjoy it.
I smell like sulfur.
I smell like sulfur, and my daddy bathed me in it that way. And the final item of the day, Johnny Tran, no on Libertarian Friday, OMFG. I co-signed Johnny. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Matt. Thank you to Jamie and Spirit. Thank you to Sam and Shul. We will be here tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah.